Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for a roundtable discussion of Warhammer Weekly. That's right. Joining me this week, it's my own little herald. It's Tom. How you doing?
Hello, friends. Happy holidays.
Indeed. This special holiday this week, this most wonderful of week in between Christmas and the New Year, we have brought you a roundtable discussion with luminaries from all over the Warhammer YouTubes. So let's just go around. First of all, we've got James from Star Mini Gaming. James, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Vince.
It is very good to have you, sir. I like how you're rocking the backwards cap. That is very Limp Bizkit of you. All right. Also joining us, it's Mitch, MC1 Gamer. How you doing, sir?
I'm limited by my word count tonight, so I'm good.
All right, very good. And I could see already, as you mentioned before the show, you're busily 3D printing terrain. That's fantastic. We're all excited. We've watched with great interest as you've manufactured an entire tournament's worth of tables. It's pretty exciting. Of course, also joining us, it's Mr. Stone Monk. Eric, how you doing, sir?
I am factastic.
Uh-oh. I love it. Yes, that's the kind of wordplay you're going to get tonight. That level of quality. Paul Conti is also to be joining us. Hopefully, he was resolving some technical issues, so hopefully he'll just join in randomly at some moment here. And what we're going to do during the show tonight is we are going to discuss the FAQ that GW threw at us and then slammed the door behind them for the holidays and ran out of the office. Like I picture the hole in the wall like a Looney Tunes style thing as they like dropped it and just ran right out of there. And I say good for them. Here's the thing. I'm going to give you a quick opinion on this right up top. We're going to get into it later, but here's my quick opinion. This is the best Christmas gift they ever could have given us because here's why. I see you shaking your head, Mitch. You ready? Think of all the discussion and Facebook posting you've done, Mitch and James, all the argumentation. It has filled your life with purpose over the holiday season. You would have been adrift, astray in this vacation time, but instead GW said, "Lo, I give unto you a gift for the holiday season, a star that you can follow." To interesting. All right, but we'll get into that later.
Hashtag drive-by.
Yes, exactly. All right. So, but of course we're gonna start off tonight with the news. So, as always, Tom, take us away.
Well, the FAQ is clearly at the top of the news list, but we are going to get back to that in the body of the show. More recently, we have another rumor engine image that has dropped. Vince, do you have the image for that?
I do.
It looks like a candy cane tail.
Yes, it does look like a candy cane tail. Let me share up here.
Let's see the candy cane.
There you go.
So, gentlemen, what are we looking at? I have my own suspicions, but you tell me.
This is going to probably be stealing your thunder. This is an undead elf ponytail tip.
Love it.
This is an ethereal elf's ponytail tip.
Nope.
Nope.
James.
This is clearly the birth of a new faction that GW has based upon the big, fat, purple cat from Alice in Wonderland. We're going to get some kind of mystical Wonderland-based army.
Better. Eric, how about you?
I'm thinking riding crop. Little whippy, but maybe that's my own biases, reaching into here. So I don't know.
I mean, with you saying that, like, I don't know, between like a riding crop and it kind of looks like a crook, has teal colors, that kind of screams Tomb Kings to me. But more realistically, which it's not Tomb Kings, I actually think it's a Gryph-hound tail. I think we may be seeing our Gryph-hound kit in weird psychedelic colors. I don't know if that's what it is. Again, this could be me wish listing, but it kind of looks like a tail. Kind of, they have like that leopard. They have the different type of cat bodies with the bird heads, dog bodies with bird heads. I'm just saying, could be a Gryph-hound.
I think you're totally right. That was my first thought upon seeing it, was that it was a Gryph-hound tail. They've
Really?
done the Gryph-hounds. Yeah, yes, absolutely. They've done the Gryph-hounds in this stripy pattern before. And the Gryph-hounds do have the flourishy little like bloop, like tail like this. So yes, I agree. I think we're finally going to get our Gryph-hound kit.
And maybe a quarter-wrath kit. Okay. What else? So somebody dropped a rumor on the TGA interwebs, and suggesting that they've seen some of the forthcoming Duerden that are coming after the Tzeentch.
We should mention here that we had the image drop of the gyro bomber swinging in the larger Tzeentch image to attack, like the image of the ogre holding, or minotaur,
Ogroid.
whatever he is, ogroid, holding the prosecutor. You can see a gyrocopter coming in for a run behind him.
And if you see the full zoomed out image, he's in melee with Ironbreakers.
Yes.
So clearly we have some Duerden echoes there, but the claim has been for somebody that has seen him, that we have armored up Duerden with rifles, a hero on a jump balloon, and a Zeppelin-like troop carrier.
What is a jump balloon?
I do not know. That's what I want to know. But you know what it sounds like?
Like a jetpack, but just like a hot air balloon and jetpack.
I'm in. If that's what it is, I'm in. Like,
I'm in.
And then they said the rumor image mill from 1116 came from the Zeppelin type model.
Interesting.
So if this is the case, gentlemen, what does that mean for dwarves? Does that mean that they'll have like remote deployment?
Some means to get further down the table, yeah.
Like maybe they're going to spill out of the Zeppelin. Like, so rather than just being able to choose a spot on the battlefield to dump like the Skyborn Slayers and stuff like that, or the Sky that's drilling up from underneath, maybe they're going to deploy out of the Zeppelins.
So what about this, Tom? What do you think about maybe like, because whenever you say Zeppelin, I think kind of like a quick redeployment. So what if you keep the Zeppelin off the table initially, and it's like pick a board edge, you move onto that board edge, and then you can deploy after that? It's some kind of like pseudo deep strike.
Maybe. Like, I could see them deep striking. So maybe a modified version of the carrion. So what about a modified version of the carrion mechanic with the fly high? Only they don't even start above the board. Like, they don't even start on the board. Maybe the Zeppelin deep strikes, and then they can deploy out of the Zeppelin. I don't know. Like I said, it's a bunch of very interesting mechanics, if any of this is to be said, of these high-flying dwarves, which indeed, if they are, I totally called it last week.
Here's what I think. That you get a chance to shoot the Zeppelin down, and when the enemy does shoot it down, it still is like a burning wreckage coming down and smashing into the unit that shot it down, and then dwarves appear.
That would be amazing.
Ready to just smash. So
I'm in.
Cinematic wins, right?
Rule of cool.
Rule of cool.
Yeah, it would be. I'm very interested. We like the idea of a troop carrier. Like, certainly there are a lot of things that transport troops around the board, right? Like, that is to say, if you think of people who make things fly or make things teleport or stuff like that, that's all fine. That's well trod ground. But the idea of one model carrying other models in it in some way around the board in AOS is untrod territory.
It'll be like the 40K Rhino. I remember when I played 40K back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and the deployment of a Marine squad, a tactical squad, just popping out of a Rhino was awesome.
Yes, I have to wonder if we're not absorbing something there. Like, it's entirely possible. Troop transports are a very fun thing in 40K. They're a big part of the game. It could be a thing that shows up here, and it could be the way that we get dwarves actually moving on their stunty little legs.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is that it's a descriptor, right? Because you could say, hey, wherever the Zeppelin is, then Stormcast can come in from the clouds, right? Or from Azir in lightning bolts, or dwarves could come in from lightning bolts. So I think you could describe it that way and it would feel familiar. But if you're saying they're just coming from the ship, It's just a change in description. It's a similar mechanic though to that, or to tunnelers, or to the So I think it's a different way of describing it than we've ever heard in Age of Sigmar.
I think the biggest difference will be if you can destroy the Zeppelin before they get out of it, because you can't stop the lightning strike, you can't stop the teleportation necessarily.
Yeah, that's the difference. Can I shoot this thing down before the dwarves come out of it? And then what happens? Do the dwarves just roly-poly roll on out? Probably so.
Maybe. I mean, they're like the flying dwarf jokes would just run rampant. For certainly.
Sure.
Hey, maybe that's how the Lord of the Ring dwarf and barrels get used.
Absolutely. There you go. I mean, I have to say, like, it wouldn't be that hard to write this rule in there, right? Like, you can say that 10, like at the start of the game, you could pick a unit and say it's deployed in the Zeppelin.
We do this already.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, like, they could just out deploy during a movement phase, and the hero in the hero phase, things could pick them up. Think of like the way chameleon skinks work, right? Except it's going up into another vehicle. And then, like, worst case, you got a special rule of like called the horror, right? And or whatever the reporter said when the Hindenburg went down, and you know, like, if this thing is destroyed and it has troops in it, you roll 1 die for every model that the thing's carrying around. On a 6, they take a mortal wound. There you go, something like that or whatever.
It would be the humanity.
The humanity.
So
Thank you.
So it would be the free peoples.
Yeah. Oh, the humanity. Thank you. I appreciate the correction of the quote. That's exactly what I was trying to get at.
I'm an old fuck, so.
No, it's good that you were there to witness the Hindenburg going down.
Yes.
So you remember the live report on television.
I did a forward roll out of the way before it hit me.
Good plan.
Bringing it back. That's it for AOS news.
Sure. I had a couple pieces of 9th Age news I wanted to share. First off, obviously 1.3 came out. Go check that out. It's another iteration forward. And this actually is going to go right on my pick of the week. I'm going to do my pick of the week right now, because also we have the fluff out of the base rulebook. And if you are a fan of that sort of classic old world style fluff, they wrote some great stuff here. And my pick relates to this, which is the Orange Road did a very long, very cool video. It's about 35 minutes long, where he explains the fluff of the war of the 9th Age, where he reads out a really cool story from the beginning. Like, it's a great story. He does it very good justice reading it. I think the Orange Road has a career in reading books on tape. Let me just say that. He's got a great voice for it. So I'll link that video down below. That'll be my pick of the week choice. And it's really cool stuff. My other pieces of news, Tom, I'm plowing straight ahead.
Do it.
All right. 2 other critical pieces of news, people. Here we go. Piece number 1. Warhammer YouTubers End of Year Awards. The links will be below. Go vote. If you have not yet voted, get your votes in. There are some close categories. I cannot enunciate the word close enough. There are multiple categories that, as of right now, this is not hyperbole. There are multiple categories that right now, the leader and like 3 or 4 other people are within 2 or 3 votes of each other. Okay? That is a close competition. And there have been hundreds of votes so far. So
Really?
get your voice. Yeah, absolutely. Make your voice heard. Go vote if you did not already. The next thing
do you expect more people to vote for this than the presidential election?
Absolutely. This is more important. This determines a lot more important things. The responsibilities of the Warhammer YouTuber Awards are much greater than that of the president, yes.
Not to mention the candidates are.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. These are candidates we can all support. So the other thing I want to mention is this is the last week for the Warhammer Weekly Extravaganza of Giving. That's the charity drive Tom and I are running for UNICEF. They do a really great amount of work for displaced children around the world who are suffering from, as refugees or displaced because of war and other sort of things. If you can afford to donate anything, especially as hopefully you've got Christmas in your hearts, even if it's only a couple bucks, it helps. I'll put the link down below for the Everyday Hero page. To be very clear, Tom and I get $0 of this. We take absolutely nothing from this. This all goes directly to the charity. And when you donate, there's a message box where you can ask a question. We encourage people to ask any question they want of us in a sort of Ask Me Anything format. We will be doing a live show after the new year where Tom and I will answer any and all questions asked, no matter how embarrassing. So if you're looking to embarrass Tom and I on the air, you can do it for $1, which is a pretty square deal. In addition to that, everybody who donates is automatically entered into a contest. We're giving away just a bunch of stuff. Couple new in box, like the trolls from the Lord of the Rings, the eagles from the Lord of the Rings, a small metal orc and goblin army, including a bunch of boar boys and just stuff, Wurzag or whatever his name is, and goblins and wolf riders. I'm giving away a display model I painted for competition, the Dark Oath Chieftain, a entire Space Hulk box set, an entire mega starter army of ogres from Kings of War. Thank you to Tom Broker, who've donated the last two. Just a bunch of stuff. So you can win a lot of free stuff for any contribution. The link will be down there. The donation page stays open until December 31st. So if you have the means, please do donate. If you don't have the means, I would love it if you'd go to the video, which I'll also link, and give it a share or like, just to let other people in your communities know about it. There you go. Thank you very much. Okay. That was a lot of stuff I just rambled through. Tom, any other news?
Nope.
All right. Obviously, it's a slow news week because of Christmas. Yet we still managed to fill up 20 minutes of the show. I'm proud about that. All right. So let us turn to our picks of the week, since I already mentioned mine. James, start us off, buddy. Do you have anything you've been watching you wanted to share with everybody? James, who is nominated in the YouTuber Awards for Best New Series, he and Paul, who is being not here. But James, what do you got?
I actually don't have one. I haven't really been watching a whole lot of Warhammer stuff. I actually just started getting into a game that you're familiar with, Magic. So I've been watching a bunch of like demo tips and stuff on that.
Don't do it.
Well, that's okay. Then I've got a fun pick of the week that I'll share on your behalf if you're watching Magic stuff. Okay. Which is, I recently had a link I shared with Tom from the very first Worlds tournament at Gen Con in 1994. It's a bunch of pictures. In it, you see like a trade binder open, just sitting on the table, that has 7 Moxes and 2 Black Lotuses in it. There are people playing with like multiple Moxes and Lotuses on.
To put things in perspective, that's like $60,000 to $80,000 right now.
Yes, because multiples of them are beta.
Yeah.
And
like,
you see people playing with just like unlimited and beta Moxes and Lotuses unsleeved on open tables, just scooting around, just having a dandy old time. Yep. Playing with a card that would be worth $6,000 today. No, whatever. Get this.
So, you had a crystal ball.
It's also got like all of the people who would become like luminaries of Wizards of the Coast are all there in those shots. So like Mark Rosewater's there looking very young 20 years ago, all this stuff. So I'll share that link on your behalf because it's super fun. There you go. All right, Mitch, what do you got?
I have been watching very closely Steve Herner's development of terrain for Holy Wars. And cannot wait to get some minis on the table and play with the floating islands that he has. So I don't know if you have any pictures ready. I do, but you know, if you want to,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let's see if I can go ahead and share that.
Yes, Steve has been designing some absolutely breathtaking stuff. That's what I'll say. I'll latch on you here, Mitch. There you go. Perfect.
All right, so you got this. Let's see. These are just phenomenally done, and these are not even finished. You know, he's building up stairs. You can see a lot of portals, so that you're going to be, I'm sure, teleporting to different parts of the table. And there's who knows what the missions are going to be. But if they're just to harken back to the Zeppelin that we were talking about, yeah, this looks like a little bit of a stairway to heaven here, and.
I'm going to own some face. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to own some face on this table.
I'm not saying anything because it'll be so much sweeter when I wreck your plan.
Own face.
I like it.
All right. So let me unshare here.
No, that's great. That's very cool stuff. Steve obviously is doing amazing terrain work. His existing boards are incredible. So you guys are going to have a great time. That's for sure. All right. Eric, Stone Monk, what do you got, buddy?
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody's heard of it, but I don't know how many people I've heard talking about it. And that is a blog on TGA community called The Hinterlands. And I'm sure you guys have talked about it or whatnot. It is a it's kind of a Mordheim type mod for Age of Sigmar. A lot of fun building little 150 point or coin units and running through some scenarios. And one of the coolest things that it's like a 10-page rule set, but like 2 pages for this, and then another page for like scenarios, and then like 2 or 3 pages for like running an RPG of it. So each of your friends brings like a character and then eventually you can get some henchmen for them. So just some really cool narrative ways to be playing Age of Sigmar, beyond even, just the narrative play that you find in the general handbook. It just opens up some interesting multiplayer narrative RPG type play, which is kind of cool. And so that is tga.community/blogs/blog/96-hinterlands. So
very nice. Well, I'll make sure that you give me that link.
Yep.
So I can post it down below in the show notes. I see Paul has finally joined us. Welcome, Paul.
Woo! All of my technology has finally stopped failing. It may still continue to fail a little bit. I'm hoping that I don't just sound like a Cylon right now.
No, you sound normal. You look like a ghost. Like you look like you're in an Insidious movie, but other than that, you're fine.
That's good. Let me see if I can fix that.
Yeah. All right. Tommy, what do you got for a pick of the week, buddy, while we're waiting on Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to point us to a battle report that went up about a week and a half ago from Tabletop Minis. And it was a short 1,000-point fight of Stormcast against Death. And it was a fun little fight. Martin made a couple of mistakes, but what I enjoyed the most about it was like they came at it and they're like, well, technically one of us doesn't have the right battle line and somebody else is like 20 points over, but whatever. And it was just a great modeling of just good old play that we just don't see enough of, because so much of the talk is like, okay, well, wait a minute, that's not a valid list because you went over 20 points or da 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 da. And so it was just a good kind of fun back to the basics AOS game. It showed how powerful. It showed both how powerful Mourngulls are in the 1,000-point matchup. At the same time, it also shows that they're vulnerable and that you can take them out. That they're not unkillable. So I'd encourage you guys to watch it. It's a fun little battle report.
Very nice. The link for that will be down below as well. All right, I'm going to have so many links to post after this. Oh, my goodness. Get ready, people watching this in the future, for the deluge of links. All right, well, Paul, you joined up in the middle. Do you happen to have a pick of the week you wanted to share with everybody? I'll put you on the spot. Oh.
Frozen.
He's frozen. All right, that's okay. We will move on. Such is the thing with a roundtable discussion sometimes. Yep. Awesome. All right, so let's go to some hobby time. So, James, what have you been working on, buddy? Are you also just hobbying on some Magic decks, or are you working on anything? Oh,
I'm sorry.
James, you're up.
You just finished the
You're
game.
up, buddy. Hobby time. What do you got? What have you been working on?
I've been working on some demigriffs that I finally got a hold of. I, for a long time, considered getting some and converting them into an alternate Necropolis Knight to kind of match the aesthetic of my Death Army. I want to make like a custom Tomb King army, but I want them to more closely look like my vampiric Death Army. And so I'm right now working on some converted skeletons to ride them.
Nice. Awesome. I like it. It's good conversion. Undead are always ripe for conversion, that's for sure, because, undead can be undead of anything. I was just looking at the Cursed Company out of the Dogs of War earlier today, as a matter of fact, which is like, the undead skeletons of all the different races. All right.
Mhm.
Mitch, what about you, sir? What's your hobby time? What are you working on other than printing terrain?
You hear about the 3D printer. I'm going to show you what I'm printing, but I'm printing this stuff. Now, this is going to be like a board that I'm going to do this. Hold on. This is a board that I'm going to be using. This is from Printable Scenery, and it's got links, so you can basically make them modular. Of course, I'm failing to do it right now. It's got all these little pegs, and this is a crypt that I'm going to use as the board for my Holy Wars. But what everybody probably has been seeing me do lately is this. And that's my Hex Wraiths. Working on.
Oh goodness, too bright.
Yeah, too bright. All right,
down. There you go.
All right, whatever. You can't see it here. If you want to see pictures, you can go look at the PMP. I don't blind anybody. But bottom line is, I'm working on the last 2 of the 10 that I'm making for these. These are my converted Hex Wraiths that are questing knights, failed questing knights that are now undead. Poignant that you should just have pointed out that you could do anything with undead and make them anything. And that's what I'm doing. I'm using up a whole bunch of bits. And you figure out all the bits that I put into these Hex Wraiths, you win a cookie.
I assume you'll pay for the shipping for that cookie, so that's a good deal. All right.
Virtual cookie.
All right.
Can I interrupt real quick, Vince?
By all means, sir.
All right, Mitch, I was just going to let you know I finally got my hands on my Morn as well, so I don't have to be jealous of you anymore.
Oh, nice. Okay, good. Well, and now that we know that they're vulnerable because of tabletop minis, people don't have to whine and moan as much.
Oh, I already knew they were vulnerable. I played them in my first game against an all-bow army, and that was pretty tough.
Congrats.
Just enough shots went on them to eventually bring them down.
Exactly.
Yep. It is like with them, since there's nothing that's going to really penetrate other than mortal wounds. It's often just about, massive shots.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like with anything powerful.
All right. So, Stone Monk, what about you, sir? What are you working on?
Well, I'm kind of taking this last week of the year and trying to finish up any models that didn't quite get finished. A couple of heroes in the Stormcast or here, there. You're working on a project and then you start something else and you leave a couple of things waiting. And I pulled out all of my pulled out all the stuff and found that I finished, completed about a little over 8,000 points worth of models this year.
Wow.
So I'm kind of just working on seeing if, I've got, 40 more skeletons here that I'm looking to maybe finish up this week and just kind of add to the collection and get started. But then I'm also starting for my first project for the new year is going to be Soulblight. And so I'm using Demigryphs as Blood Knights. So I've got them working on, and then one of my conversions I'm working on is a Spectral Phoenix as either an Abyssal Terror or a Zombie Dragon ghosting through a building. So
sweet, I love it. I love it.
Neferata's body will be on top of that with some other head, I'm sure. But so I'm kind of excited to get some of that in there and get back to the undead. I started out the year with undead, and I'm finishing it with undead, and feels like a complete year.
Very nice. I love that. I love the Phoenix ghosting through that building. Did you just slice the building and then top and bottom it on the wing?
Yeah, I sliced the building best I could. Put a pin through there, drilled the hole through it, and then glued it. And then I had to attempt. I'm terrible with any Procreator or green stuff. So yeah. But the other guess thing I'm proud of is I took just bits of sprue and cut them into bricks and glued them on there. And if I put some mortar or like wood filler or something in there, that'll clean that up even more too. So little pro tip: you got bricks lying around with your sprues, no problem. So
nice. I like it. Beautiful all over the place.
Thank you.
Fantastic work, sir.
Thank you.
I dig that up and down. That is how you base a model, folks, right there. That's the way to go.
Like that too. This is a 40K Basilica Administratum. So I'm proving. I said that at the beginning of the year, as I felt like a lot of the 40K stuff could be used in Age of Sigmar, especially that first image we got of like Azir with the big huge gates.
Yeah.
I think that there's a 40K kit that has these huge eagle gates that can be really cool for that kind of thing too.
Oh, I've used that very building you've got right there. I
Yeah.
have hacked that building to pieces for like, I have multiple Bretonian peg knights and stuff like perched on various portions of that building. And yeah,
Cool. Then I'm following in your footsteps proudly.
I wasn't trying to hipster you.
No, I
was
get
just
it.
saying I completely agree. Yeah, it's you're absolutely right.
You may in fact see something like that at Holy Havoc next year.
Perhaps. All right, we'll see how that works out. Tommy, what do you got, man?
I am just plugging away at some Nurgle, as I've been doing for I don't know how long, for forever it feels like. With Holy Wars coming swiftly in like 6 weeks or in 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. I am working on some of my force for that tournament, which I'm somewhat anxious about because, as I had mentioned last week, some of the composition changes happened and it added 30 some models to my force. So and I'm having to start those from scratch, converting and everything. So yeah, that's happening.
Well, there you go. It gives you something to work on. Again, like I said, much like GW, it fills the time. There you go. Steve is doing you a favor. For me, I finished up the models themselves for my next competition unit, which is a Malifaux crew. That may or may not be for Adepticon. I haven't decided yet. But this is the Ice Dancer out of Rasputina's crew. So I'm very excited about her. Here's her little ice golem buddy. So there you go. Now I'm working on their bases. They're all going to have my patented ice base process. So those should be done here very soon. And right behind them, lined up, are the giants for the Budget of Sigmar challenge. So there we go. Plenty of stuff on my table here I need to do in the next couple of days. All right. As always, we want to know what you're working on, because one of the great hopes of this show is that we're helping you fight the war against the gray. So, throw some stuff in the comments. What are you working on? What did you get painted while you were watching? It's always good for us to know. All right. So, with that out of the way, gentlemen, are we prepared to deep dive into the FAQ, the frequently asked questions that GW dropped and ran?
Let's do it.
Prepared?
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. Let me share up here. We're going to start with the regular rules, because this was split out right into the rules, the General's Handbook, and then one for each Grand Alliance. So we're going to start with the general rules. All right. All righty. Here we go. Screen sharing up. All right. Tell me if you can see my screen without issue.
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Lock it on yourself.
It should be locked on me. Yes, it is locked on me as far as I know. Okay. So let's start out here with the first one. Now, this one's funny because it has a background to it, because this one was added, this whole thing about like you read this and it seems totally obvious because it's the way that I think I always played it and everybody I knew played it, which is like if you've got, a damage multiple thing like a D3 and you hit with 5 attacks that do a D3, you'd roll 5 D3, right?
Yep.
But like when this first went up, somebody printed the wrong answer that you would roll a D3 once and multiply it by 5, right? Which was incorrect. And quickly everybody freaked out. And to their credit, they pulled it down and fixed it like immediately within an hour.
Well, to their credit, people freaked out because with the new Zinch rolls, you could basically with the little bow guys that do a D3 shots, D3 damage each, you could sub out one of the Zinch D Destiny dice for that and just blow up a unit with an auto 3 damage, per model.
Yep. By the way, for those watching, I will post the link out to the FAQ in the show notes. So many links, but it'll be down.
I'd also point out as a precedent with that is that all of the things we're going to talk about the FAQ are being heard by GW. And regardless of what we're thinking, they're not rushing out to change a whole bunch of these, right?
Right.
So that they're listening. They've got reasons. It's that sort of thing. But that was a great example of them rushing out and saying, "Oh no, there was a mistake there. We can fix that," in same day kind of response. So they're listening. It's more credit to their kind of what they're doing and stuff, and good for us to avoid.
Which does highlight
you're going to have an error once and then, right? That it's not going to be perfect, but they fixed it. People make mistakes. They fixed them. There you go.
But we know that there weren't mistakes then for the other things that they didn't fix.
Exactly.
Well,
We'll get to them. We'll get to them, Mitch. No, I know you and James are over there just waiting. You're revving your engines.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's move on. We're going to cover obviously everything in magenta here because that's the new stuff. Okay. So this one right here. Many Age of Sigmar rules refer to a unit being within a certain distance of another unit or of a location like a table edge. What does this mean within this context? Specifically, does all of the unit need to be within this? So again, this one was fairly obvious. For the most part, it's just if any model is within that distance, then
which allows for like Congo line deployment.
Yeah, but I think most people were doing this anyways. I've done this with my dryads to Wildwoods, right? Yep. So I think this is
zombies.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is how most people understood this rule. I mean, did any of you have any thoughts otherwise about this?
No.
I mean, this one was fairly clear. I think
you can't do it the other way, because then what you're doing is you're punishing horde armies. So they have rules that make less elite troops that you need more bodies be able to provide you with benefits like taking and holding objectives and so on. But then you can't punish people for doing that, where the rules just neutralize you from doing it. The whole idea behind having large quantity models is to counter the really, really tough units that have less bodies.
Yep, I totally agree. All right, so I don't think that one's controversial, but I want to move on to these next two, which are deceptively simple. Is a unit within range of itself? Yes. And can a single model be a unit? Yes. Okay, when these two answers come together, right, what this means is that Drycha murders herself every time she unleashes her sprites.
Yep.
Because
it says all units.
Yeah, Drycha specifically says all units within, the range on the table, you roll 10 dice and every 6 is a mortal wound. Well, she is a unit within 18 inches of herself, certainly. Because
it's going to get amended. I'm telling you, that's going to get amended.
Sure. There's a couple other examples like that, but she's just the easy one that comes to mind.
Doesn't hers specifically state friend?
No.
It doesn't?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it does, like, it says all units. So, like, people had already accepted that it was subject to friendly fire, but they didn't think that it actually murdered herself, which indeed she does.
Well,
yes, because it absolutely affects all models.
Wasn't the question of a unit being within range of itself already answered before? Like, whenever I read this, I was like, I thought they already talked about this.
Well, Tom asked the same question. It was answered more narrowly before, of like, can a model choose itself? Like, when like as a unit. As a unit, like could a commander has an ability that targets. Yeah, like I'm a Khorne leader and I have a thing. I'm a Khorne mortal and I have an ability that affects Khorne mortals. Can I target myself with that ability? That they clarified that to be yes.
Or do I include myself in the area?
Right. Do I get the benefit of my own command abilities?
Yeah, but that's different than saying yes. You are always in range of yourself.
Right.
So yeah, it's fantastic.
It is. It leads to interesting outcomes. Yes, it's where it's obviously painful, and there aren't a huge number of these, but there are some. Some of the big monsters out of the Monsters Arcana have this sort of thing too, where like they say all units within X inches, this thing happens. Well, that means it happens to them too.
Yeah.
Right. There's a couple models I can think of out of the Monsters Arcana that do the same thing, like that cause penalties to bravery, or you know what I mean? Like suddenly all these things are applying to that model itself. If it says all, if it
doesn't say all other.
Yeah, if it's not if it doesn't say all other or all enemies.
Or all enemies, right.
Yeah. If it just says all. And there are a couple like that. So interesting stuff there. Yeah, I expect this is going to be further changed. That's my call on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Are terrain features and scenery the same thing? Yes. Cool. All right, neat. I don't think anybody thought otherwise.
Oh, I did. I thought feature was something you actually, spotlighted, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, exactly. Okay, movement phase. This one's really interesting because, Tom, when I read this one, this is one of those game design things,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Where I've run into this so many times when I'm writing game rules. And this is just the type of thing where it's like, it's exactly the space you can explore as a game designer that your players are going to get wrong all the time, right?
Yeah.
All right. So several abilities allow a unit to make a move, quote, as though it were the movement phase, end quotation. Does this allow them to make use of abilities or special rules that normally only apply in the movement phase? For example, in the hero phase, a unit of Colonel Hunters in a Free Spirits battalion can move as though it were the movement phase. Would this allow them to make use of the Forest Spirits battle trait, where a unit can be transported to the battlefield in the movement phase? No, it does not. All it means is that the move is made as though it were the movement phase. So the distance the unit moves will be based on its move characteristic. It can't move within 3 inches of an enemy model, blah, blah, blah. Furthermore, abilities that specifically state they can only be used in certain phase can only be used in that phase, and or their effects will only apply in that phase. So again, it's one of those distinctions between anytime you start saying as though it were, like you can make an attack as though it were the combat phase, shoot as though it were the shooting phase, right? You get to do that specific thing, right?
It doesn't turn the phase into a movement phase,
right?
Like it doesn't bring the existence of the movement phase into the being of the current phase.
Yep. Yep. This highlights that there's a distinction between the action shooting, right, and the phase where that normally happens, the shooting phase. Those are two completely separable things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's tough to wrap your head around.
Yep.
I did enjoy this chart. I thought this was nice. This was a nice addition, right? Of like, what type of move, what is the distance, and what are the restrictions? So that's kind of cool. Because I will honestly say some of the players, I've played with players, and this is easy to get confused of like, wait, am I allowed to come within 3 inches of a model here, or whatever, blah blah blah, right? So
for me, the only thing with the whole like move and charge and all that I always kind of questioned was like, is being at exactly 3 inches considered within 3 inches? Like for
Sure.
purposes of you can't move, but certain abilities trigger on enemies that are within 3. So I'm like, is exactly 3 that, or yeah?
Yeah, I'm on the line. Yeah.
I always abstract that one and say, wherever I'm at, we can agree that I'm outside of what that is. And for the purposes of charging, right, I have to roll higher than 3 to make it, or right,
Yeah.
I might, because measuring can still be imprecise, but yeah, if one of those kind of declare what if everyone knows what you're doing, then whether you're on the line or not.
Right. It's one of those things where it's obviously the golden rule applies, which is if you state your intentions clearly, you're less likely to run into trouble later, right?
Yep. Agreed. Completely.
Okay. Because like when I move, I just often move models up and say, and like I put down the nice Holy Havoc measuring thing we got there, and I say, okay, line one up, and then I'm like, all right, I push the rest in. I'm like, they're all at 3 inches. I don't have time for this. It's close enough. All right. Some abilities allow a unit to pile in and attack twice, while others allow them to immediately pile in and attack a second time. What's the difference? Again, I felt like this was fairly clear, right?
Yep.
The difference between like the double punch and the I go, you go, I go a second time. And that's obviously the difference there, right? I feel like, was there any units that any of you thought that this was confused on? Because I think they're all fairly clear.
No, I had always felt like it was fairly straightforward.
Yeah, I can't remember a unit that actually does an immediate, and maybe one escapes me, and there is one that does an immediate second attack right there. I mean, is there one?
So like the Bone Giant, you have to roll to see if you do. There's a Huskard rule that lets another unit immediately pile in, but usually it says immediately. So I think there's a couple of units that draw it into question. I was reading the skeleton or the Dan's Macabre, and that the way it's worded, You know, it's like you can pile in and attack twice. You know, in grammar, right? You could say, well, does that mean I pile in once and attack twice?
Yeah, it says you can be chosen to be or activated to pile in or something like that, which means that you have to actually take the act of activating, right?
Yeah. So, but I mean, in grammar, right? If you have a list of things you can do, is that applying to all of them? Which I think we're all saying, yeah, at first read. But once you start getting variants in there where other things can do it, I think it can be easily in isolation say, oh, wait a minute, is that so?
GW needs to copy and paste more.
Yes. I agree with that.
Yeah, copy paste definitely solves a lot of issues here for sure. Just make sure you keep using the same wording. I've got to imagine at this point they have like a bank of text, right? That is a lot of these things that can be commonly utilized, and they just pull from there. All right. This was an interesting one. If several units can use the same ability at the same time, must you say how many of them will use the ability before you carry it out? Or could you carry out the ability with one of the units and wait to see the outcome before deciding whether the next unit uses the ability? For example, hidden shadowblade assassins are revealed at the start of the combat phase and then get to pile in an attack. Could I do this for one assassin before deciding whether to reveal an attack with another? The latter. You can carry out the ability one unit at a time and can wait to see the result before moving on to the next. That's kind of cool because I could see the confusion of that. I don't know that I ever ran into this. It's fairly corner case, but I like the clarification. Did any of you ever run into this situation?
So this is one of the most important point here is with Fanatics, interestingly enough. And there's some people that have confused this answer with a later answer about individual models in a Fanatic unit piling out. And so when we get to that clarification, this is going to be important to come back to.
Yeah. Yep.
Because this clarifies that situation that we'll deal with later.
All right. Anybody else? Any thoughts on this one? Or pretty non-controversial, I think, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now let's get to a controversial one. Tom, are you queued up? Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. How do you determine what models and units make up a War Scroll battalion? When is it based on keyword and when is it a unit name? Answer. When a War Scroll battalion is referring to a keyword, it appears in keyword bold. Otherwise, it is referring to the name of a unit. And then this I'm going to read the second one because it's also related. Can a single unit take up several slots in a War Scroll battalion? So, for example, it says like one Nurgle hero and one Nurgle unit. Can I take up both of those things with like Gutrot Spume, right? Because he would be both. The answer is no. Okay, Tom, why did this fill you with righteous indignation?
Bullshit.
There we go.
Okay, so here's the deal. Previously, in the last FAQ, they ruled exactly opposite to this. They said every battalion requirement is a keyword. Okay, and they did this in multiple rulings, and in fact, one of the rulings still exists where they say that you can break this rule. And so here's let me go jump back. Here's why this is important. They did not start formatting battalions in this way until the Compendium's released last spring. So everything that had been released in the prior 7 months has not been formatted with this keyword as bold intentionality. A great example of this is in the Moon Clan units. The Moon Clan battalion, they rule in the fact, and this was not removed, that Skarsnik qualifies as the Night Goblin War Boss because he has the keyword in his description. But according to this new fact, he doesn't actually qualify because it's not keyword bolded because they didn't format it correctly, and so nothing in any of this. So nothing in any of the Stormcast battalion, the books, or anything prior to that. So Stormcast, Everchosen, any of those. Actually, I take that back. The Everchosen does use keywords in the battalions on Mortal Heroes. So that is an exception to that. But most of them do not. And it creates tons of problems. And this is the new rule. So moving forward, if it's not bolded, you can't sub in other units for it.
Right. So older battle tomes and the Compendium, in some cases, suddenly becomes impossible to use. Some of the battalions.
No.
No, some of the scrolls.
That's not this FAQ. That's a different FAQ on changed names. What this one is doing is it's saying that you can't use in the new Dawnspire battalion, an Archmage is in the requirements, but Archmage is not bolded. If Archmage were bolded, then you could sub in the Archmage on Dragon. But because the Archmage in the battalion is not bolded, you have to just use the base Archmage on foot or the mounted Archmage.
Got it. Right. Okay.
So that's what this requirement did. And it just makes me sad because like Cetra can't be subbed into the Tomb King's battalion anymore and a bunch of other similar things that made a lot of battalions more interesting. Now that a lot of them are just boring.
Well, Tom, there's a very easy fix for that. You just have to hack into the website and change the font yourself.
Or GW can be not lazy and go do it for us.
Never going to happen.
Yeah, well, and like there is design intent and all that other stuff. So this was just my frustration. It made me really sad. So for the Johnny in me wants to build a diversity of lists and look for neat and like ingenious combinations and stuff like that, and that just doesn't work with this new FAQ, which runs against the grain of all the prior FAQs. And they ended up even having to change, interestingly enough, the actual requirements on the Anointed of Asuran or the Phoenix Temple battalion because this breaks it, and this breaks the prior ruling. So, anyways, I'm done.
No, it's good. I feel like it was cathartic for you. It was important to let you get all that out. Yes, we'll see the Anointed change later. Did anybody else have any other thoughts on this one? Yes, undoubtedly it is interesting, the implications, because I think what really, to sum up what you're saying, Tom, is it knocks a lot of the older special characters out of contention, right?
Yep.
Because they have a different name than, than Tomb King or whatever, right?
And is that the intention? Because the rumor, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Vince.
No, please.
The rumor way back when Age of Sigmar was not even released, we didn't even hear the word Age of Sigmar, Age of Sigmar, was that, and people still talk about this, is that they were going to slowly but surely push out all the old armies, all the old ways of playing, all the old models, and eventually over the time bring in new war scrolls. And if this is one of those methods to support that game plan, then it makes sense, because little by little they'll make rule changes that make those, and we're going to see with one of the future FAQs that we're going to get into a little bit later on. But are we seeing this little stealth adjustment to try to push people out of using some of the legacy scrolls and battalions?
I don't think so. I think that is a sort of Machiavellian level plan that I think is no. I mean, their plan to get rid of the old units is very simple. Stop selling them. Over time, people stop playing them. It's pretty easy, right? Don't offer any more update for them. Make new cool armies and rules and special things for them. Like, you're never going to get a Tomb King dead. Well, you will from the community, from a pretty awesome guy. But you're never going to get like a GW.
March 2017.
Yeah. You're never going to get like a GW sanctioned Tomb King book that has like TK artifacts, specific artifacts and stuff like that from Games Workshop, right? Like, eventually those other elements would just weigh them out of the meta for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say though is that what it does is it does break some of their current stuff. So, for example, there is no White King basic anymore. There's White King with X, White King with Y. Okay, and any requirement that has White King that's not bolded like that battalion doesn't work anymore, because White Kings don't exist in just their name as a unit name.
Right. Yeah, it creates this weird situation because clearly,
like prosecutors are, for example, you can no longer, according to this rule, you can no longer field prosecutor, any battalion with prosecutors. Because all prosecutors are either prosecutor with javelin or prosecutor with hammer.
Those weapon names are in smaller font than the main name. So
it's in the name. It's in the scroll name. Like no, but it's actually the name of the unit. Like if you go down to the keywords, that's the name of the unit. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
I don't know if you're right on the prosecutor thing. You are right on the White King thing, I believe. Prosecutors with celestial hammers, prosecutors with storm call javelins. Yes, that is their full name.
Is that their keyword as well?
No, the keyword is just prosecutors.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter because those aren't bolded, so you can't use keywords to include those in a battalion. You have to use the unit name.
Well, what I'll say is
the new FAQ.
Well, what I'll say is he's right that like when you go and look at the actual war scroll, it says prosecutors with stormcall javelins. Like that with stormcall javelins is tiny, tiny text. I think you're there, Tom. You're making hay. Okay.
Well,
like,
if they're gonna break my toys, other people's toys get broken too.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I literally think I think you're trying to split a hair there.
Well, there's a lot of hair splitting going on with all of what we're talking about right now.
Sure. Cetra isn't a Tomb King.
It's a barber shop.
Like, he doesn't have that name anywhere in his name. He is a Tomb King. I'm not saying he's not. He's the King of Kings. He is the ultimate Tomb King. But I'm saying he doesn't have Tomb King anywhere in his name, right? So if their intention is to make it so special characters can't fill this, does that. But the idea that like White King and then in tiny text it says with, axe or whatever. Okay. I still feel like we all understand what's going on there. It's not a special character. It's not a different name. White King is right there.
All right. I didn't make the rule. They're the ones that wrote the fact, and as written, they've broken it.
The problem is, the problem is that if you're talking about casual play, non-competitive, a bunch of guys, whether you're even affiliated with each other, you just get pickup games in a local store. People can come to an understanding pretty easily. There's no trophies on the line. Nobody's getting, a cash prize or anything like that. But once you get to the tournament level, that's when this stuff becomes contentious, and every little syllable and word it comes into play. And if it becomes that kind of thing, I mean, that's where it slows down games because of interpretation issues. That's where TOs have to spend more time trying to figure things out with lists that get submitted to them. And this is when we get into these problems with all of these hardcore rules. It works in this situation, it doesn't work in that, and there's a duality in terms of interpretation, there's contradictions, and then all of a sudden you also have the situation where potentially things change, reverse gear, and all of a sudden what was possible suddenly isn't. These are problems that we have, these consistency issues that we had over the course of all the versions of Warhammer that we're starting to see crop up in Age of Sigmar, and I think it's making the game not only more complicated, but it does suck a little of the fun out of it. And if you get into a competitive situation, it can do more than suck the fun out of it. It could make you could be one of the reasons why you lose, because if you have to argue these points every 5 minutes with somebody or try to go to a dice roll or something, that's taking time off the clock, but where you have less time to achieve objectives. I'm not even talking about the just casual fun, beer and pretzels. I'm talking about if you're a competitive player, and if you're loving the whole thing with the General's Handbook. But these types of things are probably the kind of things that you either love it or you hate it. But either way, it's going to have an impact on your tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this one would be fairly simple to wrap up early, and once the TO says it's okay, no one can say anything to you. You've got TO, you're good, but nonetheless, sure. Hopefully, we can see more wording. There's always going to be those things. You cannot write rules that don't have these things.
Well, but they should go back and they should update the old war scrolls and bold where they need to bold so that it covers all these cases where it should apply, but it won't because of lack of consistency and the evolution of the game. It's kind of the same thing with where I see events constantly now. They say we're just using General's Handbook. Well, what does that mean? There's points in the I'm not going to go on a whole tangent. All right, we can talk about that later if we have time or if it's another subject.
Sounds good.
Right,
no, you're okay. You're fine. Yes, I think it would be great. I don't know that they're not going to update those old war scrolls, those old battalions.
I'd love to see them if they did.
Yeah, I don't know they're not. I don't know they certainly haven't yet. It'd be cool if they did.
Yeah. And I'd say, in the course of producing things, I think producing rule books and FAQs probably would be the level of thing that would make me want to claw my eyeballs out. of the level of detail required to get it out fast and make sure you're covering every possible repercussion of that. And so I think if we waited for perfect, we'd be waiting as long, a long time.
Forever.
Well, all they have to do is hire Tom.
Well,
believe me, Tom misses stuff too.
Hey, but it is why Vince does keep me around.
That is true. That's why I do. That's what Tom does for me.
What I think it does, though, is it says, well, one, we get some answers to some questions. It can change the way we're playing the game for a while. And like you said, there is certainly, I think, to keep in mind here, some of these changes have a bigger effect in a match play setting as opposed to a narrative or open play or just down at the club. And in the end of the day, the TO, is going to tell you what you can and can't do. Like, even if it says in the rules that you can do this, they can tell you no.
TOs have enough headaches and enough work already. I'm kind of a
that's why they're not going to
but they're not going to look at every single thing. These are things that are going to fall through the cracks. There's just so much minute detail.
They're not going to put it in a pack. But if you have a question about it and you reach out to them, they'll answer that question no matter.
That's true. That's true. Case by case.
So they do have a lot to do. So they're not going to put try and get every repercussion into a player pack. But if you reach out to them about, hey, I've got this list and this is what I want to bring, do you rule that works? And they can say, yeah, right? So I think, we don't know if it could change back. It could change another way down the road. And I think along the way, we just get different ways that we're playing, right? Yeah. We had a heyday where this thing was how you played it, and it was crazy, and it went this way, and then you switch it around and you do it this way, right? And maybe it'll switch again down the road. But
yep. All right. Let's keep moving. That is the end of the rules. We have reached the end of this one. All right, next. We go to one that's guaranteed to produce lots of fun discussion. The General's Handbook. Okay. So this one should be exciting. All right. So first off, they changed escalation. I like this change. I don't want to deep dive into it too much. I'll just say if you're using escalation as what in your battle plans, you should go read this, because there was some ways to be bad actors in the old escalation they hadn't accounted for, and this solves that problem.
Could we go over that, or no? Or is it just not enough time?
Sure. No. Do you want yeah, sure.
I'm just curious. What were some of the examples of people taking advantage of that, or misinterpreting it, or pushing the ends of the envelope?
Yeah, sure. So because of the stepped way you deployed units in escalation, you could prevent you could make it impossible for the other player to continue deploying. That's the short answer.
Because of proximity.
Yes.
Right.
And so literally you could just make it so haha, you can't put any more of your army on the board.
I ran into that a little bit at in kind of a custom scenario that somebody made for PACA last year, where one person deployed and then next person had to be outside of 9 inches, and you could certainly if you got the first drop, kind of create board control advantage for sure. So I think anything that kind of in match play and in these, anything that doesn't kind of start somebody off on the back foot is probably a good change.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the idea that there is this contesting board control, but the idea that haha, your army that you have no ability to summon or bring in, well, they're now stuck off the table, and you just auto lose the game because of the way the scenario was written, right? Yeah. There's a difference there.
Yeah, play the game. Don't try to win on some kind of thing like that. That's just oh, oops, turn 1, I got this really rule twist, and now we're not even going to play because I win. That's just stupid.
Well, I hear that, Mitch. But what I would say is that some of it is smart play. At what point do you dock smart play?
The part where you don't actually play a game.
That's exactly where I was going.
Draw a bright line in the sand.
Play the game and win the game playing. If you can't get to turn 1, come on.
Turn 0 wins are for vintage Magic only.
Yeah, I do say a basic rule is I get to play with all my models on the table.
Yeah, I paid my money for this tournament. I came all the way down here. I painted it up, and now I'm gonna like get I'm gonna get some rule twist that I can't even play. Look, you wanna own me on the table? Hey, I'll shake your hand and I'll give you your props. But if I can't even play the game,
I don't disagree with you. I don't. But what I would say is this. Like, through a set of smart decisions, our match 2 at Holy Havoc, having us win one of the objectives at the top of turn 2.
All right, but that's top of turn 2.
And there's a lot of sure, and that's just it. Where you notice how that's not on the other side of that bright line I just drew?
Right,
you know
but again, I'm saying it's because of the way that the scenario is written and the right combination of models and things, and there was very little things that they could have done to reprisal to respond to our win.
You know, it's like you go to a baseball game and the visiting team has one guy in a uniform that doesn't have the right color shade, and all of a sudden you can't get 8 legal guys on the field, and boom, it's not going to play. You win. Come on.
Or perhaps more aptly, you go to a baseball game and the visiting team has barricaded the home team into the locker room. Yeah, like they can't even actually come out on the field, and they're like, "Well, I guess we win by default." No, you didn't play a game. You don't win anything.
Yeah, it's not thug rule.
That's fair.
If you win because of smart play during the game, because you understood the scenario and responded well in the game, congratulations, you're a good player. Thumbs up, way to be. You know, that's just called good play.
Would that be called the Tanya Harding move?
The Tanya, yes, exactly. The winning before the game is the Tanya Harding move. Yes.
Oh, leave Tanya Harding alone. Isn't she in prison somewhere?
No, I think she's fine.
I think she's out.
All right. When I set up a Sylvaneth Wildwood in a pitched battle, does its maximum unit size of 1 mean that I can only set up 1 Citadel Wood model? No, you can set up between 1 and 3. They are all considered to be a single model and a single train feature, however many you set up. I understand.
So this was an argument on TGA in the rules forum forever. Like, it was like 800 posts long, and it's stupid. And I'm glad that GW was like, no, the scroll says 1 Sylvaneth Wildwood is 1 to 3 Citadel Forests.
But this is
sorry. It was just people being dumb.
Well, no, what it is the climate of, in some cases, competitiveness. But the people that want to try to find a way to neuter an army, maybe they don't even play because they've had a bad experience and they lost maybe to that on the table somewhere. So they want to try and find some way to sabotage that from happening to them again. And it's like, you know, that mindset drives me crazy. Figure a way to overcome something rather than try to twist rules or try to get the public, the overall community to feel differently about a rule. Just get in the game and play the game and try to change your tactics. Don't try to change the rule. Jeez. So glad that they didn't rule that.
Why are you talking about the death part before we even get there?
Okay, yeah, I'll save my breath. Thank you.
All right. So, and then obviously the other thing that was clarified in a similar time to this, I'll just bring it up now since we're talking about Sylvaneth Wildwoods. We'll see it later, but the other thing was that they all have to be set up within an inch of each other, right? Yeah. You can't conga line your woods and stuff like that. Just set them up like a forest.
This was Sylvaneth Gate that cropped up in Twitter feeds last week.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna comment about this. I play Sylvaneth, and I got to tell you that I misread this rule. So this is one of those cases where you think you know the rule, and then you go back and read it. And I was talking with Tom about it, and I went back and actually looked at War Scroll again. And I was like, oh yeah. Well, it makes total friggin' sense when you read it, not when you remember it when you read it like 3-4 months ago.
Yeah. I mean, we're all guilty of that sometimes. Let's be honest. We all think we've got a pretty good idea of what it says, and then oh, whoops, it was actually slightly different. I had that just today with Tom, who didn't remember the word "a few." We'll come to that later. All right. Okay. Does your general have to be a hero in a pitched battle? If your general is not a hero, does he still get access to command traits and artifacts of power? No, your general does not need to be a hero. If he's not a hero, he may have a command trait, but may not be armed with artifacts of power. Okay, cool. Neat enough.
I think that's a good trade-off.
Yeah, it's fine.
I do think this is another one where in the tournament scene, people want to keep it the way we have historically done it, where you've got a character model or a special character, whatever as the general, because certainly but I don't know if that had to do with some of those victory conditions in the basic rules. But yeah, I mean, if you it's one of those cases where your general can be then in a unit and you can't target him, right, without special things.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like my general is this zombie bell ringer in this unit of 60 zombies that's immune to battle shock.
Not
He's
the bell ringer,
ringing that
standard
bell.
Standard bearer. It's got to be the standard bearer.
Whatever you want, that's fine. The point is, it's a unit of 60 zombies that I'm going to keep immune to battle shock the whole game.
And
That
it
is
saves at a 5-up save.
Yeah, that is a
Use the
60
commander
wound general. Good luck getting him down.
Yep. I mean, and that's the thing people are worried about. But again, like you were just saying, Mitch, I mean, there's probably ways to play around it, right? There's probably either, you avoid that unit or you whatever. So, I mean,
they're making a trade-off.
It's like the argument with the Morngul or things that are supposedly unkillable. It's like neutralize it, avoid it, figure it out. Stop trying to outrule it.
I welcome anybody who wants to make their zombie bell ringer.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah, their
that.
general. Yeah, like it makes your general unkillable, but who cares? Your general also then is just a zombie bell ringer, right? Like he's not using impressive command abilities other than immune to battle shock. Like that's it. He has that and whatever his command trait is off of
for like a 500-point army though. That's going to be an unbreakable zombie unit.
That's potent, no doubt. All right.
I just have to ask, does that mean that this is almost like some kind of ventriloquist act if the zombie is your general? Because it can't like summon itself. Some necromancer had to bring it about.
Yeah, well, that's why
he's an intelligent zombie.
Yeah, that's why he's the bell ringer. So he can signal with the bell.
He fell in love.
Yeah.
So I have two counter arguments to that. A, get your logic out of my fantasy.
Sure.
No. But B is this is pitch battle. Why are you making sense of it anyway? Just that. Yeah, I mean it's down to the mechanics, right? But yeah, you're right. The blind leading the blind, right? Or the brainless leading the brainless.
That's awesome.
I think he's just you're automatically, if he's in the zombie unit, you're saying your general is Nicholas Holt from Warm Bodies, and he's like slightly alive, so he can.
I already made that joke. He fell in love.
I guess you did. Yeah, there you go. Fair enough. I accept. I accept that you made that joke. Yes. All right. Moving on. Some of the Compendium War Scroll battalions have points, but the units in those battalions have been replaced with new War Scrolls. So this is what you were referencing, Mitch. How does this work in pitched battles? Battalions which include units which no longer have a War Scroll cannot be used in matched play. Could somebody please give an example for our viewers so that this is very clear what this means?
Yes. Moon Clan Grots. The Moon Clan battalion in the Orcs and Goblins book does no longer work because none of the units that is listed regarding Night Goblins exist any longer because they are all called Grots now and not Goblins. And since the names are not identical, it can no longer be fielded.
I need to go and give some background on this one though, because this is a contradiction to a previous ruling, and strangely enough, in the released PDF, that FAQ response and question was removed, but it still exists in the app, which means they probably haven't updated the app yet. All right, because the app is still on version 1.0. There's an errata that talks about how there are keywords and that pertain to certain types of units, and that, for instance, I think the example is Free People versus Free Peoples, Iron Jaw versus Iron Jaws, and the concept is that there are battalions that use these, or even powers that use these identifiers, these keywords, which, by the way, were bolded, and it specifically said in that errata that they mean the same thing, which means that some of the compendium things, like for instance, Abhorrent Ghoul King is the same thing as Strigoi Ghoul King, because they effectively are the same keyword. It's using common sense. The game has evolved. We don't have to get down to the exact letter and capitalization, but now, of course, it's moved to a situation where they have a FAQ that says about the bold and unbold, and this particular situation where they say, well, there's no longer a war scroll. My feeling is that there is a war scroll. The war scroll is listed in the General's Handbook. The war scroll is in the app. It has points in the app. It means it's still valid. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. In the Flesh Eater Court book, you have a updated, changed version of the zombie dragon and the Terrorgeist. They're broken out. They don't have any riders. They're by themselves. And they're specific to the Flesh Eater Courts, and they have some adjusted rules. And without going into too much detail, maybe they're a little bit more fighty for the Terrorgeist, and his scream is not quite as rangy in terms of whether it could do nothing or do dramatic, crazy liquidation. It's more neutral, where it was more likely to do some kind of mortal wounds. But it has some fundamental differences from the old version, which is still valid but doesn't exist in the General's Handbook, which I think was an oversight, but exists in the app with points under Monstrous Beasts, which is the older version of these, and they even added in a zombie dragon that didn't exist there before, that's unridden, with its own profile that's different from Flesh Eater Courts. But if you go to a match play situation where somebody says it's just the General's Handbook, and because there's not a separate section that shows a different version of in other words, the Monstrous Beasts generic death version of a Terrorgeist, people think, well, the only Terrorgeist you can use is the version that's in the Flesh Eater Courts, and that's just fundamentally untrue. These are the types of things where you see a FAQ clarification like this that says, well, if there's no longer a war scroll, then it can't be used. But there is a war scroll. That's the problem. It leaves too much of this gray area for interpretation. What they're saying is, if the war scroll was completely changed, and I'll give you an example, you have a Warden King from the Dwarves, the Dwarden. The Warden King used to have the option where he could be put on shield bearers, which I'm very upset that they took away. Because I have a very cool model that I want to use, but I can't do it in match play. But they completely changed the war scroll to where it's now just the one where he doesn't have the ability to be put on shield bearers. It's just a generic Warden 5-wound guy. You can't give him 2 guys to hold him up and add 2 wounds onto him.
Yes, you can.
Why can you?
If you go to the Dispossessed, there's a separate point total for putting them on the shield bearers.
But if you granted, but that war scroll doesn't exist in the app.
I'm pretty sure it does, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. There is no Dwarf Lord in the app, and if you go to the same picture where it says the Warden King, it's just the Warden King one. Yeah. So this creates this whole this gray area where it's like, well, does it still exist? Does it not exist? Which format am I using? And that's the problem that I have with this the way they're doing with this. If you go to the letter of the rule, you have to go find this roadmap, this schematic, to find the history of this stuff, to try and make sure that you can prove this. Like for instance, in Adepticon, they even use this as an example. You cannot use a standard quote-unquote vampire counts Terrorgeist. You have to use the Flesh Eater Courts Terrorgeist. But it exists. And it has points. So that's the problem. We're having this as a major problem that they're going to have to filter through and identify until they come with a new battle tome, and new additions and new clarifications through the app.
They just need to date every war scroll. So that every war scroll, so you know which one is the newest one. Because you can buy books that have different war scrolls in them. The Death Compendium as opposed to the Tomb King's, like the Flesh Eater Courts. And they have different scrolls with different rules for the same units.
Right, but they're referenced in the General's Handbook in most cases. I think it was an oversight. I think somebody saw that it was in the Flesh Eater Courts. It's the new, princess of the death units that they want to sell. But somebody didn't include it for some reason. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was intentional. Who knows? But it exists in the app. So somebody out there is saying that those units are still exist and are playable. And don't tell me that they're not usable in match play, which is kind of what this is saying, because it has points in the app. If you buy the General's Handbook in the app, which is how I have it, I purchased it, when you toggle the points come up for those individual non-Flesh Eater Court versions. And that's the complication.
The best part is you can put the Flesh Eater Courts and the regular one both in your like my forces selection, and then flip on the points, and they still stay separate.
Yeah.
So somebody who just buys the hardcover book and nothing exists after the hardcover book to some TOs, because that's what I'm seeing in some tournaments, locally and in other regions, and they say it's just from the General's Handbook. But the General's Handbook is an evolving thing that's kind of shown. It's displayed through the app and tomes and releases of models after the fact. Things didn't end suddenly in July of 2016 as far as what is possible to play in match play.
I agree. I think the problem here, Mitch, that you're really highlighting is that like GW has been so involved in this app, and they've really pushed for it. And as you're saying, this is this fluid, living concept, and yet we have these books that are like static in time. And we need some kind of official ruling on GW's part in saying, does one trump the other, because they're not going to ever line up for long.
Well, the thing is when what do you buy? Am I beholden just to a physical hard copy? Why would I buy the digital copy ever if that's the case? Why would I ever be concerned about the inclusion of a war scroll digitally if it didn't exist in this holy tome that now is like the benchmark?
I would say, Mitch, it's actually the opposite, because now the Holy Grail is the app. Yep. Because the books themselves are locked in time, and they can get trumped at any point in time by the re-release of a scroll.
I agree with you. I'm with you on that. That's how I look at it. But not all TOs are doing that. If you look at the rules for Adepticon, it specifically says that, and it says any evolution of the War Scrolls, it's the latest one. Well, where's the latest one on the app? So it's a contradiction.
No, the app isn't the latest one. The app is the Flesh Eater Courts book because it was published after the Death Book, right?
Right, but if they update that, which they have done in some cases, if they update a specific war scroll, suddenly is it just what's physically in the hard copy of the Flesh Eater Courts, or is it from the app? I think it's from the app. The app is updated. The website is updated. You go and pull down a PDF from the website if they've updated those, and they usually do. They're doing a pretty good job of that. The most recent one of that digitally is typically what trumps a dated physical copy. But you look at TOs, and TOs are taking these rules and they're saying, no, this is the benchmark in time. This is what you're pulling your forces from. It's a problem. It's a problem that we're going to have. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you finish. I just wanted to.
No, I'm done.
For the question of Skarsnik being able to be used as a warlord, do you remember where that is in the FAQ?
Yes, it was.
I believe it's in the destruction, so we should come to it.
Because I was just looking in the destruction, I didn't see it there.
Did they pull it?
I don't know. My only I think point of like bookmark would be to say that there's the FAQ covers everything, but they don't always apply everywhere. So there could be a rule of this for matched play specifically, but when you're playing outside of match play, it's a softer rule.
So it's in the general Warhammer book.
Okay.
And it says, when selecting models for a War Scroll battalion, do named characters count towards the requirements? For example, in order to take a Great Moon Clan, I need to take a Night Goblin War Boss. Does Skarsnik fulfill this requirement since he has the Night Goblin War Boss keyword? And their answer is yes. They can be taken if they have the appropriate keywords on their War Scroll. Thus, Skarsnik can be used as the Night Goblin War Boss of a Great Moon Clan.
Which, so is it under allegiances?
It's under abilities. No, it's under War Scrolls and War Scroll battalions.
Yeah, and they name him specifically.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that answer is directly counter to the other response.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure about that.
And not only that, the Warspire Warhost scroll says that one unit counts towards two different requirements.
Here's what I'll say. There is I know that one's weird. But with the Skarsnik thing, there is a way to actually thread that needle and have both of those be true. But they would need to. But they don't have enough text to make this to make this the easy understanding. Okay. And that would be in the case of special characters who represent a thing.
Yeah.
Right. You fall back to their keyword. right? Because Cetra is in fact a Tomb King. Skarsnik is in fact a Night Goblin Lord. In the case of Archmage on Dragon, you don't fall back to the keyword because he is a generic thing that is a different unit, right? Like they could cut that line, okay?
Right.
I'm not saying that's what they're intending. I'm just saying like there is a universe where both of those rulings could be true, but they would need more text to support it,
And
right?
that- I would go back to saying that the rule about Skarsnik is in the rules FAQ, which is
Not in the match play.
not in the match play FAQ.
Sure.
So-
So you look at it as a distinction in the generic game versus match play, right?
I think that they're being very cautious or very specific about what they're putting in pitched battles match play rule FAQ versus. So I know we'll get to it. I'll make this point a little later with the ring as well. That where that FAQ is located is very specifically in match play, referring to
Right.
points, as opposed to how that, because the command traits and the ability and the artifacts don't exist in the match play section of General Handbook.
All right,
So-
let's keep moving because I want to get to that one, and it's coming up real soon, and I know we're gonna have a lot of discussion around that. All right. The pitch battle rules say that I have to include a certain number of battle line units in my army. If I include them on the roster, can I choose to merge them into a single large unit when I set up? The answer is no. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, but hold on, because we're going to come back to this later. So let's put a pause on this conversation, because when we get to death, there's going to be another ruling that's very interesting with how this works, okay? And we need to see both of these FAQs to have the full discussion. Fair enough?
Sure.
Yep.
But believe me, we are going to come back to this one. Okay. In pitch battles, does the understrength units rule override the restriction in the rules for war scrolls that say you can only field one unit that is of less than the minimum size? I don't know where this would come out. I don't know what this is referring to. Does anybody know an example of what this is actually hitting?
No
Like,
idea.
where you can only field one unit that is of less than the minimum size? I don't know. I don't get what this is meaning. Like, I mean, I understand the concept of what it's aiming at, but I can't think of a real world example that matches it.
I mean, again, if you're going to a match play tournament, you're going to have every model that you need.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And they point out rightly so that a unit can be under strength and still be above its minimum size. For example, a unit of 7 Liberators would be above minimum size, but still under strength. Like, what you would need here is an example where it said you had to have, where it's forcing you to have an undersized unit, right? Like where you only get.
There are some battalions that tell like that you get benefits for deploying undersized.
Yeah, it's just
like
not-
because you're certain multiples. So
Sure.
the Nurgle battalion in Everchosen wants you to deploy multiples of 7. The Khorne one wants you to deploy multiples of 9.
Right, but again, there you would be still above your minimum unit size.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I don't think there's an example of that. I don't think there's something where you break the minimum unit size. Yeah.
Chances are this came out of like, there's probably one, right? There's one weirdo that like the scroll says it's this, whatever. The scroll says it has to be taken in 10s, but the pitched battle or the matched play rule says it's taken in 5s or something, right? Like that would be a situation to get there.
So for example, Moonclan Grots deploy in units of 20, but you can take them in units of 10 in the actual scroll.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe that's an example. All right, but that's a weird one, super corner case. I guess it's interesting if you happen to run into it, but I never have or even heard of it happening. Okay, do the victory conditions on the Warhammer Age of Sigmar rule sheet apply in pitched battles? For example, do you win a major victory if you wipe out the opposing army? No to both questions. This seemed obvious to me because most of them specifically say, don't use those rules. This is how you win. But I very much like that they included the extra bit about wiping out the opposing army because I love the idea that I can win the scenario and still die.
So
right.
Last stand of the 300. Come on.
Yeah.
Sacrifice for a greater purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, because you achieve your scenario objective, right? Like I had to hold out for 3 rounds. I died at the bottom of 3, whatever, or whatever, right? And
actually, I ran into this on Monday night at the game shop. Some guys were trying out match play. They hadn't been doing much of it, and they read the instructions for Border Wars, and the pitch battle ones. And I even looked they said that they were using the sudden death victory stuff, and I was like, I don't think you have to use that, because I too have gone, with a lot of the campaign book stuff. It says ignore all the victory condition rules, et cetera, et cetera. And I tried in the 10 minutes that I had to look at their general's handbook. I didn't see that in the pitch battle description. It doesn't explain, it doesn't spell out that you don't use any of those sudden death things. So I was like, I could swear, but I'm sure I read it here and was like, but so I do think, and so a real world example of guys picking up the pitched battles, running it, and then using the sudden death stuff. So
yeah, I think that's actually clarified in this FAQ somewhere. I don't want to scan around for it right now, but I believe it actually is clarified in here that no, you don't have to worry about things like, so you don't use sudden death when you activate any of these scenarios.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it's clarified here in the FAQ. All right. Does a Chaos Talisman allow you to save against wounds and mortal wounds, or just wounds? Save against both wounds and mortal wounds. We'll add the words mortal wounds when we update the artifact.
This was huge. Because this was a huge rule. This was a huge argument that, the rules as written people lost.
Well, what does it say? What is the rules as written? That's not the first time that's happened.
It's I'll pull it up real quick.
It's not the first time that rules as written has been
limited, but it's a limited application. So it doesn't say both of them, and they rule that it's both of them.
Yeah, the words simply say, the Chaos Talisman says it gives you this save against wounds suffered by the blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, for each wound inflicted on this model. And so a lot of people are saying, well, each wound inflicted means there's two types of wounds, normal wounds and mortal wounds. And the rules as written people are like, no, this is only more normal wounds. This is not mortal wounds. And GW came back and was like, no, it really is mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The rules as written people were correct. They're not wrong. It did.
Right.
Mortal wounds are a different thing. They're clearly saying, oops, we left text out. Right?
Right.
Shocker.
But who could have foreseen that? That's what I'm saying.
No, that's fair, because this admission, they would have said, if the rules as intended people were correct, okay, and wound itself did accurately refer to both, then this clarification would have been, yes, it does, because if you see wounds, that means both wounds and mortal wounds, right? They would have just said, that's how it works. They didn't say that. They said, oops, sorry, we forgot the words or mortal wounds, because that was our intention.
Yeah.
So this is just an error.
Yep.
Just like they did initially with the Ruler of the Night before they added the extra text. Because rules as written, it was for within range of any of your heroes. Then they added, this only applies to within range of your general.
Well, I could see the logic in it. They just forgot that text. I didn't like it, but I could understand it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But I'm disagreeing with you, Mitch.
Yep. There's an interesting thing here. Just as I'm notice how I'm pausing right before we get to the Ring of Immortality. Since you brought up rules as written,
You're a showman and you're delaying the inevitable.
Yes.
I am.
The drama build up.
For those people who play D&D, they have an FAQ for D&D as well, which is quite lengthy and massive, and that doesn't even include the constant stream of answers that Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford give out on Twitter. But in the FAQ, at the start of the FAQ, they have an explanation of rules as written and rules as intended and what it means, okay? And they say, our rulings are always rules as intended. Period.
Cool.
Which I find to be very interesting, because they literally start the answer to every question as our intention was.
Right.
But the thing is that only they can answer what the intent was.
Yep.
Sure, which is fair. And that's what they're saying. That's why they give their answers like that, right?
Yep.
They're explaining to you, this is what we intended. So they're giving you their intention, right? You're right. Only they can do it. They do it. So at any rate.
Wise men.
All right, Mitch, James, cue it up, buddy. All right, here we go. Does the Ring of Immortality require reinforcement points to return the slain bearer to the table? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Now, full stop. Full stop. Okay? We're going to start by explaining what the Ring of Immortality does, and we're going to start by covering the base rule that this is hitting off of, right? Okay, so what does the Ring of Immortality do?
Well, without reading it verbatim, what it does is once your model that has it is that it's equipping it is slain, it allows you to the model, instead of being slain, is kind of reincarnated with die 3 mortal wounds within 12 inches from that spot.
It is replaced on the table.
It is replaced on the table. Like I said, I didn't have the verbatim rules.
Actually, I don't know if that's true.
Doesn't matter. It's we're good with it. Thank you.
Right.
That was exactly what I was
that's
looking
the
for.
net effect.
It is restored. It is restored with the D3 wounds missing.
Right.
Cool. With the D3 wounds total, not missing.
With
right?
D3 wounds total. Yes.
It says set it up anywhere on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, which is cool. Okay. Now there is a base section in the reinforcement points, which I will also say, not verbatim. I don't have the book open in front of me, but it basically says anytime you summon a model or return a model to the table, that model's points must be drawn from your reinforcement points. Okay, that's pretty clear text in there.
No, it's when you it's a unit, not a model.
Whatever.
A single model is a unit.
A single model is a unit, which was what we cleared earlier. Yeah,
well, but it doesn't. That doesn't apply to like regenning
up to your original strength. Yes, you're correct. It's fine. Okay, you're absolutely right. It is return a unit because you're allowed to regen, like skeletal units can heal themselves up to their original number, and that doesn't cost points. They clarify that specifically. Okay, so now this has caused a lot of consternation. I'm going to give this to James first because I want to get him. All right, so James, how do you feel about this ruling, and what do you think about it?
I hate this. I'll just all over with that. I think I've been on record as saying I feel like since the General's Handbook released, that death has really been kicked in the gut, step by step by step. And I understand if you play Tomb Kings or if you play Flesh Eater Force, the death can still be powerful. But for those of us who those aren't the death that we love, this, in my opinion, further sucks the life out of it. Yes, the fun is intended. Our game. I make the case a lot that Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon is overpriced when you compare it to other things within the faction, especially with like Tomb Kings units and some things that are outside of the faction, like with the Beast Claw Raiders and guys like that. Like some of their heroes are similar cost. So my question is, why would I ever pay 440 points when I already consider that overpriced to bring back my Vampire Lore on Zombie Dragon at a greatly reduced strength level of up to 3 wounds? Like, I don't understand the logical consistency of this. How a 14 wound Vampire Lore on Zombie Dragon is worth 440, and then a 3 wound Vampire Lore on Zombie Dragon is worth 440.
Well, in the immortal words of Steve Jobs, you're using it wrong. And the answer is because you're assuming that they're setting this rule based on this model or this combination.
Right.
And the reality is that this is just the rule, period.
Right. I'm going to go read the rule.
I'm using that as this example, but what I'm saying is there's no instance of any unit in the game. Like you can pull any hero that you're going to put this ring on where they are of equal value at lesser strength.
Really? So, for example, let's say that you wanted a foot hero as your general who has 5 wounds, and you wanted him on the table, and he gets assassinated. Okay, by losing him, you are losing not only a 5-wound hero, you're losing your general and your command ability, which is the Lord of the Night. If you fielded 2 of them, it means nothing if you fielded 2 of them, because you still lose your command ability and you still lose your command trait and any if he gets killed. But with the ring, you can pay an extra 100 points or 120 points or whatever it is for this this Lord on foot, and put him back on the table and retain both your command ability and your command trait.
It's a viable scenario, but it's so rare and in terms of what people are actually doing that I don't think that it's a fair comparison and a fair logical conclusion, because if you put, even if you're playing a small game with a 5-wound hero, all right, and he's got your general's battle trait or whatever. The bottom line is you just to keep that battle trait in with a guy who has potentially even just 1 wound left to pay full price, it's still not worth it. I really don't think it's still worth it.
Even if you take that White King example, and let's say you roll the best roll you can get, that White King, like point-wise, and its effect and staying power on the battlefield is lesser that second time because it's 3 wounds versus 5. You will never get your hero back.
But that's actually having a general on the table for turns 3 and possibly 4 or whatever. Like, that's the difference, is that it doesn't matter about effectiveness. This matters about having somebody in a clutch position. This is not the end-all, be-all. This is not amazing. I'm not going to say that this is always the go-to item. It's not.
It's a scenario where it could make sense.
I think that you deploy this item in a certain circumstance on certain heroes. This is not the go-to anymore.
I want to read the reinforcement points section real quickly.
Sure.
And I want to tell you that I agree with this ruling. I just don't like I think that the intention of the Ring of Immortality was not to be played this way, because there's other rules that are written in different ways that break this or usurp it. But let me give you some examples, because Tom, just like always, you always find that one distinction to support a point, and it's a very good one to support that point. But it's not it doesn't work in terms of the game. I don't think that the ring was meant to be that only for a potential general or only for a 100-point hero. People were using it on potentially generals that have command abilities, like a 440-point zombie dragon with a vampire lord on top of it. Now it is completely unusable for any of those cases except for that one finite and one remote scenario like what you're describing. But let me read the reinforcement points, and this is going to cover a whole gamut. Okay, it says sometimes a spell or ability will allow you to. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, not that. You know what? I pulled it up and I pulled up the wrong thing.
It lets you replace a unit back on the table, or
all right.
bring a new
one. It says sometimes a spell or ability will allow you to add units to an army or replace units that have been destroyed. In a pitched battle, you must set aside some of your points in order to be able to use these units. These points you set aside are called your army's reinforcement points and need to be recorded on your army roster. Now, the really important distinction here is replaced. Okay, so if you have a unit that has died and has a special ability that allows it to return to the table, it's covered in all these facets. So let me give you a couple of these examples, because I wrote this out and I have all these different examples. I'll try to be brief. All right, let's look at Vandus. Okay, and this is why it's inconsistent. Okay,
Vulcan?
Vulcan. Excuse me, not Vandus. Vulcan. All right. You're paying full price for you're paying full price for a unit that may come back with only 1 to 3 wounds. All right, so a death hero, any death hero, 120-point death hero, 100-point death hero, or a 440-point. But here's the crux: there's simply no way that you would ever use this that in the way that it's depicted with the ring. It's wasted. It's a wasted roll for an artifact. All right, if you're trying to reserve points, you're paying for a vastly underpowered unit for the same value of points, and having the ability to continue to use your command ability is not equivalent to paying the full price. I'm sorry. The rolling 1, 2, or 3 wounds, potentially average is going to be 2. It's still not the value of the points that you're paying for a second guy that you would bring in, and then just accept the fact that you've lost your general, because generals die. Okay, you're not going to give up an artifact just for that, especially, and if it's a cheap guy, it's not worth it. You're not going to go and default to that cheap guy.
Can I jump in right here quick?
Sure.
And I want to acknowledge that, like, if I had this, so I just built a destruction force today, and if I had this item as an option, I would field it every day on my Forest Goblin Big Boss, because that guy's sole purpose is to project an 8-inch bubble that makes all the spider fangs on all the Arachnaroks, on all of your spider riders, do mortal wounds on a 5 and a 6. That guy has a singular function, and his function is to run around and project an 8-inch bubble of 5 and 6 mortal wounds. I would
What
pay
you're saying
100.
is, yeah, in the end,
I
you're
would
willing to
pay-
pay 100 points for that.
Granted,
I
I'd
would pay 100 points to put him back on the table.
Yeah, and if I stuck a White King with this ability, sitting next to with the Infernal Banner, sitting next to a unit of zombies, just to have the redundancy to have that 6-up to avoid wounds for the unit, plus the 5-up now because he's my general. Sure, I'd want to have that. There's a situation where that occurs, but it removes all other possibilities for any other character to take this item. But let's look at some of the other characters, not just Death. All right, let's look at some other characters where the reinforcement points are required. You have a Coven Throne where it's very situational. If it kills a model, and it can replace it with a Vampire Lord. I absolutely agree. If you make this argument, it has to be across the board for every situation. So you have to have the points left over, the 140 points to bring in that Vampire Lord. It doesn't make a difference how many times you kill with that Coven Throne. If you don't have 140 points in that reserve pool, you ain't bringing that one Vampire Lord down. But let's look at some of the other ones. Hell Pit Abomination. Okay, the ring only gives you 1 to 3. Why would you take this when you compare it to some of these other situations? Hell Pit Abomination heals back a die 6. A Flamespire. Wait, let me finish. Flamespire Phoenix and an Empire character Volt and come back with all their wounds. All right, they're the same terminology. It at least makes sense that if you put these guys in with their full point value, you get their full point value. It does not make sense. It is not appropriate and and why would you ever put the points for a Hell Pit Abomination just to get potentially 1 wound back for this creature? You would not spend those points. You might for a Flamespire Phoenix. You might for Volton, potentially, because you're getting the full value. You would not do it in these other cases. Why would I ever put this on a zombie lord, a zombie dragon with a Vampire Lord, much less just a regular vampire?
I don't think it's a good argument to say that all rules have to be equal, that because one model gets D6 back or another one gets full wounds
But you're
back.
paying the same points is what I'm saying. That's the difference.
Let me say this. The Hell Point Abomination, I don't know that actually accounts. Because it actually says in the rule that the model is not slain. So that function of the Hell Pit actually negates the fact that it never died.
It's
not
debatable.
replaced. It's not replaced. It never died.
Okay, you can make an argument. I'm not sure if it's definitive one way or the other, but you can make an argument.
But what I will say is this. You are paying a premium for getting to choose who this goes on. So for the Flamespire Phoenix, I don't get to choose which of my heroes come back at full life. It's only the Flamespire Phoenix, and you know what? You're right. You have to pay for the Flamespire Phoenix. The irony of this, of course, is that I think originally they had baked in that ability into the cost of the Flamespire Phoenix is what the intention was, because the Flamespire actually costs more than the Frost Phoenix, even though it has inferior numbers across the board.
But that's not the way the rule works. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that when you look at the Coven Throne, it's the same thing. I think the Coven Throne is more expensive because of things like this, because of this particular situation.
That are suboptimal, and there always will be. Half of the items, Mitch, out there, I probably would never take. I would look at it and go, nope.
Okay.
I think this is moving.
What if you're forced to roll like an Adepticon? What if you're forced to roll and then you roll this?
I think that is unfortunate, is what I would say.
There's a couple other things that the ring brings you. And so I think one of the things that we're suffering from is, so you think software or anything where you have something and then it gets taken away. Yeah. It's always harder to lose something that may have been misinterpreted. Who knows? But it always feels worse to lose something than to gain a minimal thing, right?
Yep.
Well, had this been presented with that clearly, we would probably be thinking differently about it.
But I think it was presented clearly. I think we just misinterpreted it. I think the ring was supposed to function like this.
But that's what I mean is so if we had the full interpretation and we were all clear on it from the get-go, I think we'd be looking at it differently. I don't think it would be a zero worth item, because I do think it gives you a couple things. It gives you board position with a small model, right? I get my Vampire Lord. He charges in. He dies. Now he can go anywhere else on the board. And threaten something, he can heal back stuff, that sort of thing. I think that Death is that with their summoning, is they don't have to declare what the summoning is.
Yeah.
But some events also force you to have fixed lists That is another thing that is being
Well,
changed.
but I don't.
in the
But
organized
that's again, that's a TO thing. That can't be covered in General's
That's
Handbook.
not a game thing. That's a TO thing.
But it's becoming pervasive. It's becoming pervasive, though.
Well, but then this could be a way to make an argument that I have to have. Certainly, maybe I have to declare what my reinforcement points are for summoning, right? Maybe I have to declare that, but I can bring a bunch of stuff and then make choices, right? Because then you could choose to use the ring in that clutch position, or you could choose to summon in another Vampire Lord at full health, or not Vampire Lord, but another, something else at full health. I think Death has flexibility in that that not, most other factions don't have. And I think this is just,
any summoning has that flexibility. It's not just Death.
no, sure.
Anybody who can summon.
But Death,
Seraphon will have it. Chaos will have it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not going to do Seraphon. So the difference is this. If you're Death, you can summon anything in Death. Unless you're running a Slann Starmaster, you're not summoning Seraphon.
That's
all
true.
Order casters can't summon them.
That's true.
So there's a nuance here of flexibility that Death is bringing, that Chaos is bringing, that other factions aren't bringing.
True. But that's a whole other argument. The fact that many more and large regional events are forcing you to have a fixed list. Some of the reasoning is because of time slowdown.
Right.
And I get that. All right, but let me bring up another point here. What about the Green Knight? What about the Green Knight? Same thing. He has built into his points and to his ability, but he keeps returning to the table. That's part of his function, part of his special effect. I think I misspoke. I don't think the Ring of Immortality was intended to be used in this way. I think the rule was intended to be used in this way, and I think the Ring of Immortality should have been worded differently. And the way to correct this would be to change the wording of the Ring of Immortality, but that's not going to happen.
Okay, so let me jump in here. This is all good discussion, and I wanted to give Mitch and James a chance to have catharsis and to heal. I feel like we need a healing, but I think that focusing on the ring. First of all, Eric, I love that you brought up I just read an article today about the psychological bias of how early we get attached to things, and how when we lose things we're attached to, we hate that more. But to me, this actually points, the discussion about the Ring of Immortality is the wrong discussion to have.
Yeah.
Okay. Because in the end, I don't care, and I don't think it matters that much. And I know that sucks for Death players. I'm not saying it doesn't, because you had it, now you don't, whatever. But in the end, it's one item. And literally, if this, because here's what you're saying. If Death is unplayable without this item.
No, it's not unplayable. Who's saying that?
No, I don't think that's what you're saying, but I'm constructing the argument, okay? If this is the linchpin that blows up your Death Star, okay?
It's not.
Then
But
your faction is screwed anyways and has much deeper issues, okay? The architect... Go ahead, James. What were you saying?
I think you're making my case for me. One thing that I always get in discussions with people whenever they're like, no, Death is really powerful. And I'm like, well, I really don't think it's as powerful as you think it is they'll include things like the Tomb Kings and all that I didn't have access to because I came into the game too late. Or maybe it's something that I don't particularly like. So, unless I play either the newest Darlings of Death, which is, of course, a Flesh Eater, of course, which I don't like, or I play the old stuff that's actually, before my time, or someone's kind enough to let me convert it up, which takes a really long time. I'm in a hyper-limited position, which this is why it frustrates me so much. If I wanted to play the vampire units, this was a really important artifact, if not the most important thing I could bring.
I can play without it.
Yeah, I totally get that. I really do. Yeah. My argument is, and I think you're right, and that's my point. If there are deeper problems, then that's fine. Those should be addressed. We shouldn't be relying ever on one item to solve the problems, right? So I agree. Because if we are, that's bad design and that's bad everything. That's just bad. What this really puts a finger on, okay, in my mind, is that the state of reinforcement points and the way they're used right now is does not align with the way many things are designed. Okay.
Yeah. They have been tacked onto the system.
Because what we're really saying here with the Ring of Immortality is it's not worth the cost in vast majority cases. Like, sure, Tom, you constructed one that I'll say is completely valid, but even you would agree that vast majority cases, it's probably not worth setting aside. If I'm playing a 2,000 point army and I've got a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, I'm not, whatever, that's just what I have. That's my boss. It's probably not worth setting aside more than a fifth of my army to get a guy back with D3 wounds, right? That's probably not worth it. Could it be sometimes? Yes. Will it be most of the time? Probably not. We're not talking about, we're not looking for 100%ers here, okay? So, and that's not alone. Coven Throne that does that, sure, because it has this weird chance. There's all sorts of things like that. There are spells in like the Skaven list or the Screaming Bell or stuff like that that like can make
Vermin Lords and
it can summon Vermin Lords.
Right.
I'm not going to set aside 500 points for a Vermin Lord on the off chance I roll boxcars.
But you might have paid for those points
I like
in the unit.
Well, we don't know if it's designed. Like,
Right.
you're making assumptions about design.
Well, that's just it. So that's what I'm saying. Right now, we have a misalignment between the generic rule, which is very harsh and meant to like crop out the nastiness of like the common stuff, right? Where you can just sort of hit the button and get a unit, right? Summoning, stuff like that. That rule was slammed down to stop the nastiness. Yeah.
And
think
needed.
we can all
It was
agree on
needed. It was needed.
Yes. It's there to be this like bulwark against this vast universe of gross stuff you don't want. And to speak back to Stone Monk's very, very important point, in matched play, right? Which is really what we're in these pitched battles. Like this, notice this occurs under the FAQ pitched battles, right? So we're talking about points, we're talking about pitched battles. It's a very specific thing. Okay. But unfortunately, in building this very big dam, a couple other innocent fish got trapped in the lake. Okay.
Conservationist nightmare.
Yes. Where suddenly a lot of, and like, I think the Ring is one of these, but I think that the Ring is just the current Flashpoint example, but I think you could point to a lot of others.
Flame Spires. Like, I wanted to field Flame Spires because they come back. I'm never going to point that points out. So now I am only going to field Frost Phoenixes.
Right, but here's the thing, though. You can choose not to field the Flame Spire. Okay, and I get that. You can choose not to field the Green Knight. I get that. You might be paying a premium for that and not being able to use that because you now have to set aside more points if you want to use that special ability. I get that. But here's what happens in more cases than not. And this is what I'm reaching out to you, TOs. If you're a fellow TO, if you're organizing an event, whether it's local, regional, whether it's big or small, realize that with these new rules interpretations, if you're forcing the roll, which is an option, it's not the default. The default is pick. The default is pick and choose which items, which Allegiant abilities you want, that should be the standard. But there seems to be, it's in vogue now to have the random roll in the competitive environment. If you're doing that, you could be hamstringing people who don't have a choice. I may have chosen not to bring a Coven Throne for a variety of reasons. If I bring it, I'm just expecting that maybe I paid an extra 20 points that I'm not being able to use an ability to bring back a Vampire Lord because it's baked into its cost because I don't want to spend the extra 140 points to bring a Vampire Lord onto the table. But if I roll for my allegiance abilities and I happen to roll the Ring of Immortality, I am now lost out on a artifact that I could have put in there because I now have a lesser use of that artifact or even a no use where I would not even bother to pay to leave the 140 points. Or maybe I didn't bring the 140 points. Maybe I don't even have a summoning pool. Maybe I took a full 2,000 points and I don't even have the points. I roll the Ring of Immortality. It's useless.
Mitch, but this isn't even restricted to the Ring of Immortality. This is the problem, though, is that you could make that argument as it exists right now with the Ring fully functional because they have the auto summoning book on your magical item list, and if you don't have a summoning pool for death, then you could not the book, the Sword of Unholy Power. Right,
Yes.
which is you auto summon a death keyword to the battlefield.
Right. Yes.
That's already there. So you could already get screwed if you don't have a summoning pool.
Right. So now we have another one that we can get screwed.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that you're arguing against something where that's not the problem. The problem is the item selection and the TO, how the TOs are handling.
Right.
So,
So
you're
I
you
agree.
deal with that. Don't.
That sucks.
So, yeah.
Death does not suck.
We'll leave that for a whole
Yes.
separate discussion. We'll have James back, and
That's a different show.
yeah, James, we gotta have you back. We're gonna do a deep dive on non-TK death. I love it.
Oh,
All right.
man. Chin up, James. Chin up.
Here we go. Moving on. Next, these other ones are short because I knew this would be a long show, but that's okay. We've got 3 of our best friends here. Why not do a long show?
We got
Okay,
a lot of painting done.
here you go.
I do.
Hopefully, our audience is too. I'm not going to worry about the thing for God Beasts. Change the bullet point under organization to 5 Ale Guzzler Gargans. Awesome. Sweet. Point this, please. Thank you. Moving on.
Yes, please point it.
we can't miss this.
Yep. We all agree we need to add points to this. Very good. The motion is passed. All right.
Yeah. I made the suggestion for the FAQ that giants be battle line.
Yeah.
That would
that's what I'm
be
talking about.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm with you. Oh man, I knew I liked you.
Oh, dude, that would be so amazing.
We'll see how it goes.
My all giant army thanks you.
My
I already-
son's dream is to have an all giant army.
Well, the
Everybody
answer
wants
is in our local stuff, obviously. I already talked to my group and they were like, we don't care if you put 10 giants on the table, knock yourself out.
And who would complain if Age of Sigmar just turned into Giant Hammer?
Not me. I love giants.
That would be amazing.
All right. Okay. Next up, if I put more than one, by the way, this is destruction. I don't know if I said that or not, but this is destruction. If I put more than one Grot Fanatic in the same unit of MoonClan Grots, can I release them over the course of several different turns, or must they all be released at the same time? Must all of the Fanatics that are released at the same time be placed within 1 inch of the unit that is hiding them? Answer, they must all be released at the same time and must all be placed within 1 inch of the unit that is hiding them. So
Is it
this
time
is
for
the...
Tom the Freak?
Yeah, so, well, I don't know, freak, but this is the corollary to what Tom was talking about earlier.
No, so the interesting thing here is that what is not clear is that are these Grot Fanatics all in the same unit, or are multiple units of single Grot Fanatics being put inside this one unit? Okay.
Well, it says more than one Grot Fanatic in the same unit.
Okay.
You're saying the
right.
Grot Fanatics units?
Yeah, so each Grot Fanatic, when you purchase them, they're like, you can get 1 to 6 models per unit, and you put them inside a MoonClan Grot unit.
Right.
Okay. So, for example, one of the popular things to do is to purchase a block of 20 MoonClan Goblins and to put 6 independent Grot Fanatics into that MoonClan unit. So they are 6 drops into that MoonClan unit. And then people are sending them out one by one to block charges. Okay?
Gotcha.
Now, people are looking at this ruling and saying, you can't do that. If you declare, you have to declare all of them at the same time and then release all of them. If you release one, you have to release all of them. I don't think that that's what this is talking about. Because if that was the case, the other ruling regarding assassins would be wrong, which is, activating ability. Can you choose that are activating at the same time to release multiple units, like popping out one assassin at a time?
It's definitely contradictory.
I don't think the assassin one has to do with whether the assassins are in the same unit or not. I think it's saying if you're putting them out from different units, right? If I have an assassin over here and an assassin over here, can I do one and just see what it does before I choose to do the other one, or do I have to declare all of my stuff coming out at once?
I think the assassin one said that they're all in the same unit.
Can we read it?
I flipped back to it here. If several units
Yeah.
can use the same ability at the same time.
So each assassin unit, is a one model as a unit, is using its hidden shadowblade ability.
Right. Or could you carry out the ability with one of the units and wait to see the outcome before deciding whether the next unit uses the ability? And so when put together, I tend to agree with your reading here, Tom. In this case, if you have 6 Grot Fanatics that are one unit, right, and you have hidden that one unit into the one unit of MoonClan Grots,
all 6 have to come out.
All 6 have to come out, right? Because it's that previous thing with the assassin says When you choose the unit, it does what it does, and it goes, right? But if you have multiple units, you may wait for them to resolve before deciding whether or not you want to do the rest. So I would tend to agree with your reading.
So, but some people want to look at this and go, okay, all of them have to come out. Well, I think this is answering the question of people were dropping 6 Fanatics into a unit and then wanting to piece out Fanatics one at a time. That's illegal. You can't do that. And that's what this is answering.
One dropping into each individual unit?
No, so
individual droppings into one.
I have 6 Goblin Fanatics that as one drop, I am putting those 6 into a Grot Moon Clan unit, and they're wanting to deploy them one at a time.
Right. I would say you have to deploy them all.
Right, and that's what this ruling is saying. You have to deploy them all.
But now, if they were a unit of its own,
6 individual units that have been placed into that unit one at a time.
Right.
You can release them one at a time.
Right. Now, what's the benefit of having them grouped into one unit by themselves? Because
when you activate them to attack, all 6 attack.
So you're losing flexibility by getting that.
On one hand, you get more attacks in on the charge. On the other hand, you get to drip feed combat and never take it.
One is a defensive, one is an offensive.
Got it.
Because the defensive one, you're going to send out and block charges, and that one Fanatic's going to die, and then you get to counter charge the next turn because you get all your.
So you can block multiple charges if you do it one way, as opposed to just hammer a unit the other way.
Yes, that's exactly.
I would also point out that that's additional drops at the start of the game if you're doing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So you're losing. Yeah, you're losing who gets to pick first turn.
So you have to declare a drop saying Goblin Fanatic.
Yes,
right. That guy. Okay, that's my drop.
I got it.
Grot number 2, Fanatic.
I am deploying this Fanatic into a unit. I am deploying this Fanatic into a unit.
Oh, I haven't seen people do that. I'm going to have to look at that.
Yeah, it's a great tactic.
So I read this one to the counter of what you guys are, even with the assassin contradiction, only in that I don't think the word unit here applies to the Fanatics.
You're right. It's not explicit in here which one they're talking about.
Yeah. So I mean, I think as written, it's saying if you have any Grot Fanatics in a unit, they all have to come out at the same time.
But that's counter to that other ruling.
Right.
I agree that there is a contradiction, but I would say
it could be unique to the Grots.
Yeah. To me, I think as long as they're separate units, you can string them out when you put this together with the assassin ruling.
Right. You've paid the price at the beginning of the game.
Like that, I would love to see more clarity around this, dealing with the idea of multiple units of Grot Fanatics, because this is silent. If I put more than one Grot Fanatic, okay, it doesn't talk about how many units these guys occupy in the same unit of Moon Clan Grots. Unit of Moon Clan Grots, right? This is the one unit.
Yep.
So, like, this needs additional clarification up here. There you go.
Agreed. Yep.
All right. On the Moon Clan Grot War Scroll, how many netters count as a few? This is the funniest thing to me. Up to 3 out of every 20 models. Great.
I
cool.
hate it.
Neat.
I hate it. I wanted a unit of all netters.
Wait, you said he wasn't going to freak out.
I was already plotting.
I think everybody wanted that.
Tom wanted to act against the spirit of the rules right away. Because when he doesn't get a hard number that limits him, why would he in any way pay attention to what the spirit of the rules are? Please continue.
Clarification, this whole release of Errata just was a continual kick in the nuts of Moon Clan Grot players.
Welcome to the club.
Because
to be fair, Grots deserve it.
Apparently, because their battalion was broken because those units no longer exist according to this. You can't run their battalion anymore.
I had it coming.
Yeah, when you deploy Grots out of the nasty skulkers and all those, they have to be deployed like within 1 inch of your units. You can't conga line them anymore. You can't do all Grot net units. I don't know. It makes me cry. Why do you hate Moon Clan Grots so badly? That's what I want to know, GW.
Why do you hate so badly? Insert in the middle of those two things several different things.
Here's what I would say. I would say the fact that so much errata had to be placed on Moon Clan Grots has more to say about the players of Moon Clan Grots.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're all a bunch of nasty skulkers and yeah.
Hey, you can't fault those sneaky gits. That's all I'm saying.
Indeed. They're all a bunch of sneaky gits.
Appreciate them.
I love that, Tom, you read a few and said, oh, well, the whole unit of 40 is a few to me.
Hey, that right there, That right there is an entire shelf, one shelf of night goblins just waiting to be painted.
I'm going to remember that, Tom,
how many
the
come in
next
a
time
box?
I ask you to borrow a few bucks. That's all I'm saying.
How many of these nets come in a box, by the way?
3. Like they actually just hard coded it to how many you get in a box.
All right.
As with everything else that's like that. Okay. Do all of the nasty skulkers in a unit need to be set up within 1 inch of the unit when they were hidden in after they use the surprise rule? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, this is a kick in the teeth to Nico, who at Blood and Glory was running Fanatic bombs, and so he would like pop them out, and he Matryoshka dolled the Fanatic unit, so like one was inside another, was one like they were inside each other, and so he'd pop one out and then pop another one out and pop another one out, and he would wrap around because you can deploy them within 1 inch, and he would like go back to their soft units and surround them with like 10 to 20 Fanatics and just murder all them in the activation. It was amazing. It was one of the most like inventive lists I've seen, and he was using Gordrak, where Gordrak buffs when he calls his Wog, Gordrak can buff the entire battalion. And so it buffs all of the Fanatics because the trigger happens in the combat phase when they pop out. And so like it was a genius build, and he won a number of games, including like he had 3 or 4 games against the super cheaty Stonehorn lists, like the 4 Stonehorn like craziness, and he won like 2 or 3 of those games. It was awesome. But they broke it. I'm sorry, Nico. They broke it.
That's the very well-known Auric Russian nesting doll formation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just grots hiding in other grots' robes. Oh boy.
Hey! They haven't changed it yet. I've already thought about the Tenebril Shard teleport and have 4 assassins jump out of his robes.
Sure, absolutely.
So you do the assassin bomb of 5 assassins jump on a target.
I take offense to the super cheaty Stonehorn list.
Yeah, you pick it for a fight.
All right. Let's look at order. All right, so moving on to order. Tarai Warclan, change the 3rd bullet point to 1 or more unit of flagellants. Yes. And change the first, and Spyheart Warhost, change the first bullet point under the organization header to 2 units chosen in any combination from the following list: Flamespire Phoenix, Frostheart Phoenix. Neither unit may be ridden by an anointed. I assume, Tom, this is what you were talking about, that they fixed this thing?
They changed. So in here, they actually changed the requirements of this battalion, but they left the other errata the same, which is the funny thing.
Sure.
That says that like it qualifies for each and all that other stuff. So yeah, it's a mess. I mean, there's just they are. It was already a mediocre battalion, and they're like, hey, how can we make this worse to make sure no one ever plays it? Awesome, let's do this.
Can I use a Skink Starseer's Cosmic Herald ability to make my opponent reroll their dice? Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
This is a big one.
This is a big one. So the Skink Starseer, this is the one where you play the bluffing game, right? Like they pick a number on a die, and then the opponent picks a number on a die, and if the opponent guesses your number, they get the rerolls. Otherwise, you get the number.
And you always guess 4.
So this is important for everybody to know, even if you don't play Lizardmen, because if you run up against Lizardmen, you can steal their rolls and then make the Lizardmen re-roll their die with their own ability, which would be deliciously ironic.
In that game, too, at Holy Havoc, Vince totally, in the top of turn 1, stole 4 re-rolls from them and made them re-roll their initiative die starting the next game, or starting the next turn where we had won.
How rude.
Yeah,
indeed.
It was a kick in the teeth.
All right. The next one is just the thing we already discussed, that the Sylvaneth Wildwood all have to be within 1 inch of each other. In other words, no conga lining. They have to be, like I said, i.e. in a clump.
I don't call it a clump. It's the Sylvaneth Blossom.
Oh, there you go. Very nice.
Love it.
All right.
We accept it then.
All right.
A Shadowblade Assassin that is hiding in a unit is set up at the start of the combat phase and can then pile in an attack. If several assassins are revealed at the same time, do they all get to pile in an attack before the enemy picks any units to attack with? And are they allowed to pile in an attack a second time later in the combat phase, What if both sides have assassins and hidden units? Okay. The assassins are revealed one at a time and make their attack for that combat phase immediately after they are set up, before enemy units get to attack. They cannot be selected to attack a second time. I don't know why anybody would think they could be. I'm not sure where that would come from. Just because magic, I guess. I want to read like
because
that.
it's happening before the initiative starts. And so the question is if they're piling before initiative starts, when you get to they've never been chosen to pile in, because they automatically pile in when you spring them.
That
and
is
so
nonsense.
That's the logic. That's the argument
it doesn't say you can't.
Right. And I mean, right now, like, we play the rules that if it doesn't say you can't, you can't. Like, in general, that's how it's understood.
I don't know about that.
No, but oftentimes, Vince, how often have you said, does it say that you can't do that? No, then you can't.
Yeah, I would say the opposite, though, is anytime you have an ability that lets you make an attack in another combat or another phase, it says then you can also attack again later in the actual phase.
True.
This is happening in the combat phase. I would say, like the Keeper of Secrets, doesn't that model have the ability to kind of
make somebody pile in twice? Yes.
Or isn't there a model in Slaanesh that gives you get to pile in first, right?
Yeah, the
Lord doesn't the Lord take
the Lord. There's one of them. Yes, there is a model that, like, the Herald of Slaanesh. If somebody else gets selected, she just goes nope and punches him and like immediately activates in front of them.
Yeah. So I would put this as a pre-activation, like that they get to be chosen, but it's still in the comp phase. Same as like Fanatics in the charge phase. They don't get to charge again later, sort of thing. So I would contain it within the combat phase. You get one activation per model or per unit or whatever. So that's where I would put it.
Yep, makes sense.
Makes sense.
All right.
Finally, it makes sense.
There it is. You got one.
I got one.
I disagree.
I needed that.
All right, Death. A short one, but with many. Oh boy, for only 3 things. I suspect there'll be much discussion here. All right. Tomb King's War Scroll Compendium. Tomb Herald abilities. Change the Sworn Bodyguard ability to Sworn Bodyguard. Each time a Lich Priest or Mummy Hero from your army suffers a wound or mortal wound while within 3 inches of a Tomb Herald, he can leap in front of the attack. If he does so, the Lich Priest or Mummy Hero ignores that wound or mortal wound, and the Tomb Herald suffers a mortal wound. All right. So, Tom, would you like to talk about why this is a relevant change?
Yeah, because you could infinitely absorb wounds. Whoever was next to 2 of these Tomb Guard or Tomb Heralds could be always immune to damage 100%. Because what would happen is they would keep jumping in front of each other's wounds. Like, one would jump in front of the wound, and then you'd take your ward save for being a hero. And then if they failed that ward save, they would take a mortal wound, so the other one could jump in front of it and take that wound and roll their ward save. And if they failed the ward save, the other one could then jump in front of it. And they would just bounce back and forth until eventually both of them, one of them made their saves, and all the wounds would go away. And so any other hero that was ever next to 2 of these guys would always be immune to all damage ever. So that's how it was written.
This is unachievable.
Yeah, it worked, and I talked about it. Say what?
The rule is unachievable now.
It's unachievable because yes.
You know why it was that way is because their wrappings were Mobius strips.
That's a really good point. That is maybe my favorite reference you've made all night, Eric. That's amazing.
Oh, that's such a good call. Yeah, it's unachievable now because the Tomb Heralds don't have either of those keywords, so they can't catch damage for each other now. Yep. And in general, like, I'm okay with this change.
It screws the other Death heroes that are not Tomb Kings. Though.
It makes it so that they got the only aspect of that I'm really upset about, Mitch, is that Arkan doesn't have either of those keywords.
Yeah,
he should have a mummy keyword, because that's what he is.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's disappointing
about. Can these guys actually take a save for anybody? Because literally here in the rules section, it says that the Tomb King or the Tomb Herald can leap in front. I don't think your model actually gets up and leaps in front to take the wound.
Oh, now you're going too far.
Okay, rules warrior. There is flavor text all over all of these scrolls. But anyways, what I would say is that I like the change. I think it's appropriate. Yes, it hurts the rest of Death, but that doesn't bother me because I was going to run pure Tomb Kings anyways.
That's a great response. Well, it doesn't affect me, so fuck everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the reality is this though, that like it was intended for Tomb Kings. Like,
Granted, I agree. Absolutely, it makes complete sense, but still, fuck you, rules guy.
Suck it, Nagash. Our Tomb Heralds do not protect you, you traitor.
Yes,
Wait,
Neil.
hold on a second. I'm not Nagash.
Yeah,
You are most certainly Nagash.
All right. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I am.
All right. No, again, yeah, I'm fine with this. It does still work for all of the important, like, even for the important named,
like Cetra,
Khalida, even like the Royal War Sphinx, all those things do have this. And boy, if you thought the Royal War Sphinx was tough before, have a couple of these guys trailing him around too.
Oh,
I have a list that does that.
Just wait till the Tomb Kings are retired officially.
I also have a list that uses that Ring of Immortality that you guys hate on one of these Tomb Guard, because that's an additional D3 wounds for Cetra, friends, and also returning one additional Necropolis Knight every turn for 100 points. I'll take that.
If it's one extra room for Cetra, it's because it's on the Necrotect, or no, it's on the Tomb Herald.
Yeah,
the ring on the Tomb Herald, and then what happens is that he gets a D3 additional wounds that he can absorb. He's going to teleport next to Cetra,
of course,
and he's going to play a standard, so he's going to keep returning Necropolis Knights and Skeleton Chariots forever. So I think that 100 points for that ring of D3 wounds is completely worth it.
Oh, so now I see why you're in favor of it.
No, I just I think that circumstantially the Ring of Immortality is appropriate, and I think that he is one of those examples.
All right, let's move on. Can I use the Zombie's Shambling Horde ability to create a unit that is larger than the normal maximum unit size for a zombie unit in a pitched battle?
People are misinterpreting this one.
Does it cost reinforcement points to use the ability? No to both.
No,
okay. Hold on now. Let's go back to the original. Now let's go back to that one. Remember that I said let's put a pause on, right?
Yeah.
That was in the General's Handbook, and that was here. The pitched battle rules say that I have to include a certain number of battle line units in my army. If I include them on the roster, can I choose to merge them into a single large unit when I set up? The answer to that is no. So, my reading of this is I could take 3 units of 10 zombies, set them all up.
As 3 units.
3 units.
Yep.
Once play has begun, I could merge those 10 zombies into a 30 block.
Yes.
Yep.
You're not increasing the size of each of these units. They're each 10. The combined is 30, which is using the rule.
And it's under the cap.
It's under the cap. You haven't gone to 32. You haven't gone to 31. Okay.
No, it's under
the cap is 60, but yes.
Okay, well, granted. But if you the more common way to do it is 3 units of 20. Because why would you do 30 zombies? That's a waste.
I was going for bare min battle line.
You want to do 180 points of battle line, no more.
Okay. Yep. But it's still a waste of zombies, 30. The more effective is 60, where you because it's also at the cap. You're not reaching the cap. It's the most extreme example of what you could do with one single zombie unit. Taking 3 units individual of 20. It's not at the beginning of the game. It's after game is played. It's in the hero phase. And then you can combine them into one unit. That's the special ability. You have not exceeded the number maximum for the unit, and you've not exceeded the number of models over the course of all those units. It's completely viable, and I've seen people try to argue against that. None of these FAQ points are saying you cannot do that.
Right.
So
you didn't create any models. You kept the same amount of mass. You began with mass was neither created nor destroyed.
Right. You've paid the points for all those models. You haven't added new models that you didn't pay for.
Right.
So I'm certainly hearing, in terms of gameplay, and regardless of what kind of open play narrative, whatever, that what this is saying is that if the maximum size is 60 Like you could field a unit of no more than 60.
Right.
But you could also not combine a unit larger than 60.
Right, because think of it like this. I have 200 zombies, right? So let's say I just take 180 zombies because I don't. 20 more is just going to break my back. But I want to take 3 units of maximum size 60 zombies each. And then turn 1, I want to combine these ridiculously already effectively sized 60 units of zombies into even more ridiculous 180. I can't do it because it's exceeding the maximum of this individual unit of zombies. But I still can do it because it's after the game has started.
180 unit.
What?
Can you imagine how long it would take to move those 180 zombies as 1 unit?
I've done it. I've done it. No less time than it would take to move them individually in 3 different units of 60. Maybe a couple seconds less, but no less ludicrous. But it's not as bad as people think.
Seems pretty bad.
Well, hey, you're a Skaven player. You deal with it too, right?
Now,
nah, I play Elite Skaven, yo. We go min units of 10 clan rats and that kind of thing. That's how I roll home.
And then a bunch of Skyer.
is there a match play rule that talks about where is it that it was talking about you can't be larger than your unit size?
So if you go so there's 2 things in play here. Every pitched battle entry has a max unit size.
Yep.
That's what the 60 is for the zombie. So that's what's being invoked here.
Yep.
A lot of people say, but they're like when you're returning models to a unit, you can't go above your starting unit size, which is what you paid for, what you deployed as initially. And so they're trying to invoke that to say that you can't combine. But the problem is that doesn't apply here. That's not what is in view when they talk about the normal maximum unit size. That's not the initial starting size. That is the profile maximum size.
So I'll read the under reinforcement point specifically. It's saying spells or abilities allow you to add models to existing units, don't cost you any reinforcement points.
Right.
Obviously, in this case, that's not a thing. However, in a pitched battle, spells or abilities cannot increase the number of models in a unit to more than it had at the start of the battle. They can replace slain models, but not create new models for a unit. Yeah, I would say
you're not creating new models. Yeah,
and this I think is specifically to reinforcement points.
Right.
So I don't think that. I think I was previously reading this as a case for a model of 10 zombies can't become more than a model of 10 zombies. But I would say this is a reinforcement only kind of scenario rule. So
yeah. A lot of people
I think
still take umbrage with this, though. Let me just say that.
Yeah, to me, this is a clear case where the specific is carved out clearly against the general, right? The specific rule here of the zombie's ability to merge being an unusual ability allows them to exceed that normal thing. They're not adding models to the unit to exceed their maximum starting size. They are simply combining into the one new one.
Well, arguably, this is a special thing because this is not either of those prior units. Neither of those 2 units are growing. A new unit is being created of 20 zombies.
Right.
And what they're saying is that no, you don't have to pay reinforcement points for the new unit that is being created.
Right, and that's very clear. That's right here.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, and I would say I don't know that you need to get into the argument of whether it's a new unit or old unit or whatever.
I agree.
Well, it's going to matter if there's buffs. If either of them has been buffed previously, that will matter because technically those buffs would disappear if it's a new unit.
Does it use the words it creates a new unit?
I can check quick.
I have no idea. But I think that regardless of all that, that's going down a slightly different rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
But to me, I as well have seen some people reading this differently. But to me, you put the 2 of these together, and it just I don't know. It feels pretty obvious to me, is what I'll say, of exactly how this works.
Let's also realize that it's the one cool thing about zombies. And it's the
hitting on 2-ups and wounding on 3-ups.
And it's also very fluffy, i.e. it's very appropriate for the concept of zombies. It's one of the coolest rules that they instituted for any war scroll that I've seen that just makes sense with the whole, especially with the popularity of zombies in culture right now anyway. The idea that the more of them there are, the more scary they become, but you need a lot of them. And there's rules to do that. You take that away, it's like, it's a big FU to death players or anybody who wants to use those units. I don't see there would be a reason to use them.
Right.
Plop down one unit of 60, I see, yeah, maybe, but it's just it kills it. It kills the whole fun of that, and I don't think that's the point of that rule.
So the wording is it becomes a single unit for the rest of the battle.
Okay, so it doesn't say it's a new unit. Okay.
I guess if I buffed 10 zombies with the Dance Macabre and then I added 10 more zombies to it, that would need some.
Do the dance after you merge. It's in the same phase.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Is that you buff after you merge?
Yep. Yeah.
And avoid the whole discussion.
Yep.
All right. If you have a White King with an Infernal Standard, do you start allocating wounds to one model in the unit, continuing until it fails a special save for being within range of the standard, or there are no more wounds to allocate? Yes. Okay. Cool. I mean, basically, just yes. Follow the normal rules here. I don't think there's anything controversial about this one. I think this was just pure clarification.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, and that brings us, of course, to chaos.
Who cares?
All right. Yeah, nothing important here.
How did it take that long to get to chaos? Jeez.
All right. There's some changes here to this stuff. I haven't actually looked at Clan Rats to see what this word instead actually switches. I never bothered to actually look and like what the heck does that even mean? I don't know. But this one,
covered these guys. Like, they've never been a big part of Warhammer.
yeah, Clan Rats. Now they're fairly irrelevant. All right, strength in numbers. You can add 1 to the wound rolls for Clan Rats if their unit has 20 or more models. If the unit has 30 or more models, you can add 1 to their hit and wound rolls.
So I guess stacking that maybe is what people thought.
No, instead, yes. So it's only 1 to hit and wound, not 2 to hit. Or sorry, 1 to hit and 2 to wound. That's what they're clarifying. Okay, cool. Neat. I always read it like that. But that's fine. Okay, cool. Great. It continues how I always thought it was played.
I mean, is there any case where like you take an earlier buff and you apply the second one to it and it doesn't expressly say that? Like I can't think of any case.
I can't think of any.
No, I can't. I was trying to picture any of them in my head. No, not that I can think of, because it always says like, additionally you get or whatever, right? It's that wording is actually pretty clear usually.
Yeah, skeletons have the word instead.
Right.
They make 2 extra attacks instead if their unit has 30 or more. So.
All right.
Copy paste.
Yep, sounds like a copy paste error. This one I was very happy to see. I'm glad we can finally shut up the haters. Can the 8 wounds inflicted by Scarbrand's total carnage ability be modified in any way? For example, by a Stonehorn Stone Skeleton ability, can the wounds inflicted on an unwounded model in a unit that already has a model in it which has 1 or more wounds? No to both questions.
What's the wording on the ability though?
They lose 8 wounds.
You lose 8 wounds. Period.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that just drove me completely crazy, because like this is one of those things where I agree. Certainly I'm making an appeal to intention. Okay. But like, to me, the intention behind this is just so flippin' clear, because when you read Scarbrand's total carnage ability, it's obvious that what happens here is we've created this special effect that just says you lose 8 wounds. I'll read you the exact text. Okay. If the roll is greater than or equal to the result shown in the damage table, the hit has caused total carnage, and 1 enemy model in the target unit loses 8 wounds or is slain if it has 8 or fewer wounds remaining.
Whoa.
No saves can be taken against total carnage. There is no escaping the axe's wrath. This is all verbatim, folks. I'm not fluffing this up myself. Okay. So to me, the intention there is pretty clear. If Total Carnage fires off, you're down 8 wounds, period.
So
Yep.
I had this happen at Holy Havoc, and I totally was like, yeah, fine, I'd take it. Again, on a Stonehorn, I would say that by the reading, the Stonehorn's halving wounds is not a save. So I could see somebody wanting to get clarification on that.
Sure.
Right? It's not a save. It just halves anything that it takes, right?
I get it. I do understand. Like, I get where people were trying to wedge in there, like, to get it. I'm not saying you were totally unfounded to do so.
And I didn't argue it then, but I can
Right.
see it now. And part of what I would say is that there can always be an exception to something, right? And a lot of the game, there's a rule that says, it does this and this, and there's a model out there that is immune to that, right?
Right. Sure.
So I think it's not game breaking for one model in the game, or, you know, I know there's a few models that have wounds, you know, out there.
Yeah.
The White King halves wounds with his armor.
I mean, one of the dwarf special characters does it. The War Sphinxes do it, right? There's
The War Sphinx does it. Now,
I
that's
think
one way to get by the War Sphinx.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great if Starbrand had some people out there that he couldn't, you know, his Total Carnage was a little less effective on. That wouldn't be a bad thing, but I'm fine with the clarification. I think it helps.
Yeah. This was a good clarification because it's one of those things where, like, despite all their fluffy intention, I do understand where people were coming from with things like the Stonehorn and stuff like that, right? But the loses 8 wounds thing is, you know, the problem is they don't have like the magic clarity of language to fall back on, because if I was thinking about magic, this is the difference between damage and loss of life, right? And like what's preventable by what and so on and so forth.
Yep.
So I was happy to see this because, you know, Total Carnage should be Total Carnage, baby. There's no escaping it. It's coming for you.
Well, that's where the mechanic has to be very explicit and then fluff applied.
Yep.
You know, if it needs to say no, yeah. I mean, it says no saves. It should probably clarify more things.
Yep. And that brings us to the end of the FAQ. Yay, we made it out alive.
Longest show.
Death didn't.
Ah.
Because they didn't enter in the line.
All right, so here let's end like this. All so here's the sort of as we come to the end of this. Oh, I'd like to go round the horn, okay, and I'd like everybody to say kind of give just a summation of their feelings on the FAQ as it stands now, and what you would hope to see changed. Because clearly this is a living document. We've seen that. This is the second round. I think we all. Let's just get this on the table. We all agree there are going to be more in the future. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
And they've already amended prior rulings.
Right. So how you feel about it right now, good, bad, you know, give me like a however you feel about it, whatever. Scale of 1 to 10, whatever you like. And then what's your number one thing you want to see in the next FAQ update? James, we're going to kick it off with you, buddy.
All right, I think that's probably good. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm putting this at like a 4. I'm not too happy, and I'm typically a pretty positive guy. I've only really played Age of Sigmar since I got into it, and after this FAQ, it's unfortunate with like how my local meta plays. I'm actually kind of putting it on the back burner a little bit. I just want to see more consistency in the future. I don't want to see rulings that I feel like, okay, this makes my unit or some other army's unit noticeably weaker, and this other army has a similar ability but gets ruled more in their favor. I feel like that was too much of what happened in 40K and pushed me away from that game, and I don't want to see GW do it here.
Fair enough. So we can hope for some more consistency for James, and hopefully a return to maybe a return of the uptick to death. Let's get some death stuff out here for James. We got to hook it up. All right. I just don't feel right in the world if Star Mini Gaming isn't piloting the forces of death to their inevitable cold victory over the mortal realms. All right.
Here.
There we go. Mitch, yourself.
I got to give it somewhere between a 6 and a 7. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer because there's a lot of good stuff that's in the FAQs. You need clarifications for these things. I just think that's exactly what James said. We need some more consistency. We need some more a checking of or a proofreading. It rears its ugly head all the time. The GW, I'm sure with the best intentions, just doesn't take the time with quality assurance to make sure that the message is consistent across the board, and that creates that gray area, and that gray area creates conflict or muddles the game, and it takes and any ruling that I think that takes away fun and creates this interpretation conversation or expands the inevitable interpretation conversation is taking away from what we want to do, and that's rolling dice and playing with our plastic toys. Anything that makes it difficult to join in on the open play, on match play events, because we don't know whether or not each of these events is going to use the standard interpretation of the rules or the local interpretation of the rules or the skewed interpretation of these rules, I think is taking away from the game and making it more difficult to engage in those types of events. And then it puts more burden on the TOs and the players as well, because they have to go and figure out what they're going to be bringing and how they're going to be building their lists. And now we just want to bring our toys to the table, okay? I would like to see a clarification that puts to bed some of these things that still have gray area. If people are still having these issues with the zombies, I think it's going to need a follow-up question so that we can get an answer that puts that to bed. Whether or not it works the way I want it or you want it or everybody else wants it, it needs to be done so that you don't go to a game and have that thing open up. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. I mean, look, I think that I want to see more of these FAQs. I'll end with this one note. Obviously, GW has gone so far in the other direction in terms of trying to engage with the community and trying to address the community and hear their voices, our voices, and try to respond to us. I do think it was a cut and run, probably unintentionally cowardly maneuver to drop this right before the holidays and run, despite what you said at the beginning of the show, Vince, because it was I don't think it was intentional. I think it was just they probably didn't realize that they dropped a steaming pile of shit in front of a lot of people, and they had to stew until the holidays are over to try and get GW to respond. I don't think they really they thought about that. On the other hand, if you want to be cynical and think that they were like being nefarious, twirling their mustaches, rearing their head and cackling, maybe if that's the GW you think that's out there. I don't know if that's the case. I don't think it's certainly not that today, but maybe could they be just having a little bit of fun at our expense and saying, oh, all the people who are uber overly serious are going to freak out about this. Let's go go on vacation and see what kind of explosion occurs on the social web. Maybe they are. Maybe they're having fun at that expense. Hey, if I was running that, you know what? It would make me laugh too. It would make me laugh too. So either way, I think that they probably shouldn't have done it, but I think it's funny that they did it right before the holidays.
There you go. Yeah, I think they gave you the best Christmas gift of all. Look, they gave us this show, and hasn't this been fun? There you go.
Always.
All right. Eric, Stone Monk, what do you got, brother?
Well, I think one, we've got 2 FAQs in the last 6 months since the General Handbook came out, and I'm definitely in favor of that continued conversation, even if they're getting it, if they're doing things that may be too drastic or if they create some additional confusion. I'm okay with that. Partially because I think, we always need the dust to settle a little bit, right? Again, like we said, if they had come out with these FAQs or written in there, if the rules were written in a way that made these absolutely clear to us that these were the intents or whatever, we wouldn't have the conversation. We would just either use it or not. So our feelings are definitely based on the immediacy of the Band-Aid being ripped off. And then I think I'll just put it out there is that the General's Handbook gave us points, but it didn't take away the conversation that we need to have with people. If I want to play a game with, the rules as they were and say, hey, I'd like to play with the ring, doesn't cost reinforcement points. We're not playing strict match play, with my buddy, whatever. I can have that conversation. I can make the rules what I want them to make. I've had it where I've said, hey, I have a Devoted of Sigmar army that has very few models. Can I put this unit in there and give them the Devoted of Sigmar keyword and just play with them like that? Like, you can have those conversations, whatever. When it comes to tournaments, I hope that these events stick with tons of variety, and some of them are strict over here and some of them are loose over there or whatever. So, my pointing, I'd put it an 8 out of 10 just for getting it out and being quick to respond. I think regardless of whether they took the time or not, we'd still be having frustrations with it, and it would change our meta you know, and we still need the dust to settle. We still need to have conversations with our opponents. So,
Yep. All right.
Love it.
No, I like it. I agree. I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think I'll have some stuff to add on to that when I go. But Tom, go ahead.
You know, I'm gonna give it a 9. I'm gonna be that guy. I like it. I really don't agree with some of their rulings, but overall I like they're engaged with the community. They're engaged with the real issues that people are arguing about. Okay, we're seeing regular engagement from them again twice in 6 months. That ain't half bad, especially since there was years that we waited for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, errata, and updates and stuff like that. I would say, and overall, I think most of the rulings were logical rulings. I didn't see any of them that didn't make any sense. I was frustrated with some of them, the keyword ones, but I understand why they made them, because the other ones were not, in the long run, the other ones caused more issues if everything was a keyword. But this one, you know, like, so no matter which way you go, there are issues. I would have liked them to remove the old errata where there's still conflict, or at least clarify why they ruled that way. The Skarsnik, for example, or the fact that the Flamespire Warhost in the main rules, they're talking about requirements there in errata that doesn't actually, they've either directly ruled against, or those requirements don't exist any longer. Because in the order one, they've changed those. But more than that, I would just like consistency. You know, this has been mentioned by other people. I think that GW has done a good job, but I can tell you within 20 minutes of reading these, I'm a systems guy, so I may be more susceptible to this than others, but within 20 minutes of reading these, I could already see where the conflicts were. And I could already tell you the units that were going to cause problems and where these rules, where there may have been additional clarifications that were needed. Mitch can attest to this. Immediately after this drop, I talked about it and I pointed out a bunch of units where this is going to be a problem. And you just need someone to step in that has a good system sense and do a proofread of the rules. And so GW, I don't know who that is for you, but hey, I do editing. Drop me a line. I'm more than willing to do contract work. But more than that, I'm sure you have somebody internal that has internalized the rules and internalized the system and the units enough to be able to read through and just look for consistency errors. And I would just encourage you to, whoever that is, to give them an extra day or two with all these rulings and let them sort through the systems and find where those hiccups are, if there are any. Because again, some of us see those very quickly, and I'm sure that you have people that can do that as well. So that's what I would say. But overall, again, it's a 9. Like, I think most of the rulings were consistent, and those that I'm most frustrated with are rulings that went back against prior rulings.
Exactly.
And so that's a consistency issue. That's not a and I had issues with the way that those other ones had been ruled previously because of the issues they created. So again, it's a consistency thing. It's not an actual ruling. I think that the rules that you did come up with, I appreciate the rulings, even though they did make a lot of people unhappy. That's where I'm at. And GW, call me.
There you go.
You better put your number in the show notes so GW can.
Yeah, you know what you need to do? You need to have a scroll at the bottom of this in the post edit with Tom's contact information.
Well, I've got an idea, so all we need to do. So, Tom, we'll just get you to come to Adepticon, like you should be.
Exactly.
Exactly. And you can just, they're all going to be there. I'm going to be in the Writing Rules the GW Way seminar, so you can come to that with me, and we can.
Are you sure? Did you get in already?
Yeah. I already bought my ticket to that one. Yeah.
Do you think that the chairs are going to be on the ceiling and there's going to be free helium?
Absolutely. I'm excited. This is, of all the seminars, I have a bunch of hobby seminars, and you know, many of them are with great painters that I idolize, and I look forward to all of that. But I am very interested to see this seminar go down of writing rules. This is going to be one for the ages, I suspect. Because look, here's the thing that they have shown, and this has been the most critical to me. If you go back to the show like a year ago ish, you know, when we were talking about hopes for the next year. One of the things, one of the things I said was they need face men or women, right?
Yep.
They need people out there who are the face of Games Workshop, who communicate the human side of the company, because the people who work here are a bunch of people who want to make the best game possible and want to do right by all of the people who are buying their game.
Yep.
I follow a ton of these people on Twitter. They all seem super nice. I've never met any of them in person, obviously. I hope to next month when I'm over there, but if they're around. But the point being is that it's not to put these people who are making these games as cackling overlords is nonsense. These people probably had a life goal to work for this company, right? And most of them are game players. But unlike Magic, which has always had the faces of people who came from the Pro Tour and Mark Rosewater and all these people, they had no one. Now they do, right? And so I would love to see the consistency thing. I think you're right is key, because it shows that, like, hey, we understand the same mastery of this stuff that we're making, right? So overall, my feeling is I'll give it a solid 8. I'm with it on an 8. I'm going to ding them hard for the consistency thing. But that being said, I think that that's a strong 8. That's a bell curve 8. Okay. Which is a really good score. Because we pointed out some problems, but the reality is there's all that other stuff that's really good and did clear stuff up. Right.
Yeah.
And we can't undervalue all of that. So, there you go. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the close of the show. Everybody's channel will also be linked down below. So if you have not subscribed to everybody, you should be. And I'll include Twitters where I can and stuff like that. So if you want to, Mr. Stone Monk is a very active tweeter.
I would say if anybody goes to try and vote for my channel, it's not on there. So all that confusion, all that energy going towards wanting to vote for my YouTube channel, don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Well, I will vote for you.
But I will say that any of that energy that you want to direct towards my entry in the best painted and in the conversion contest, you're welcome to vote for those.
Yeah, I wouldn't, refuse anybody who wanted to vote for a couple of categories I'm involved in either. But I will say this: if you feel somebody's more deserving, go that route.
No, vote for me. Shameless.
So don't forget the links for the Warhammer YouTubers Awards are down below. You have until midnight, December 31st. That is coming up very quickly, folks. Do not hesitate. Vote. Don't forget about the Everyday Hero Drive to UNICEF. You can win so much cool stuff and embarrass Tom and I live on YouTube, which will be recorded for all time. So it'll be very exciting. For the low cost of even $1, you can have a chance to win great stuff. So we'd love to see that. So there you go. Thank you very much, James, Mitch, Eric. Very much appreciated, gentlemen. It was great to have you on and to do this discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We will have you all back individually for future, more detailed discussions. We've clearly already got one planned for the great death of death. All right. So, but for all of you out there, obviously, we thank you so much for watching. This has been a long one. Enjoy the marathon. I hope you got tons of stuff painted. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.